tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk every single day. The Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk every single day. The Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. A Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk every single day. The Mishnah walk every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Mevorach. How are you doing?
I am doing good, actually. Doing well.
Toda La'el. Shall we commence this great journey?
We could do that. Do we know where we're going to be? On what page we're going to be starting at?
Chapter 6, yes.
Okay, good. But before that,
so today we're going to be looking at chapter 6 of the introduction of Rambam's commentary to the Mishnah. I know it sounds convoluted. So the Mishnah is the bedrock text, the bedrock codified and publicized text of the ancient traditions of the sages of Israel with regard to how we implement God's commandments that we find in the Torah. So God commanded the commandments in the Torah, but among those commandments in the Torah, God commanded us to heed the sages of Israel who will sit in the place that he will choose. And we have no other historical record of what their instructions and consensus understanding of how to do the commandments that God commanded. We have no other record of that except for the Mishnaic rabbinic literature. It's not that there is no other text, but there is no other genre of text. So you have the Mishnah, which is the only structured and officially authorized and publicized text that contains all of these guidelines of the ancient sages of Israel, as well as several of the positions of different sages that did not become consensus, but are there for record and for perspective. But you also have other rabbinic texts from around the same period, some even earlier than the Mishnah. However, they're different from the Mishnah because they were not organized, nor were they presented as a public format through which to learn these laws. But we'll learn more about this as we get into it.
Can I
Let's
ask a
do it.
question? Since bringing this up, I would think if there might be a lot of viewers that would be saying, "Oh, but isn't that following the laws of men?"
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I'm like going, "That's right," and we're
Yes.
commanded to do so. But I wonder if you could.
It is an explicit commandment directly from God that appears multiple times in the explicit text of the Torah, that we heed the instructions of the judges of Israel. Of course, the righteous judges. Of course, they can make mistakes. Nobody
What?
denies that.
They can make mistakes.
Would any of us be a decent person if we just completely threw out the baby with the bathwater of heeding, your local municipal laws or the federal laws? Would we be decent? Would we be a sustainable society if we just completely ignored laws of the land just because it is widespread knowledge that our politicians are not always, the most upstanding of people, or that they can make mistakes? Woo, whoa,
Well,
what a
I don't know.
surprise.
When I'm
Politicians can make
driving,
mistakes.
when I'm doing about 85 and a 55, I think about, whoever put that sign up, they were probably sinning. And so I don't have to do what they say. I don't have to obey
Right,
that law.
right.
Yeah, I
Never
know.
mind that your ancestors, either you or your ancestors, by becoming citizens of this country,
Hmm.
took upon themselves the duty to uphold the laws of this land as reached upon by consensus of the legislators in this land. No, you're still held by that. That's a covenant. That is an agreement between
Hmm.
you and the broader people of this land, that you will agree to uphold the consensus laws of the legislators. That's part and part. If you don't do that, you're not a legitimate American. You might as well.
So
You're
that
either a
carries
criminal or
over
you're not American. So what?
that carries over into following Hashem, you're saying.
All the
There's
more so because
ah.
with Hashem, it's not a covenant between just men and men, but it's a covenant between men and the people of Israel and the creator of all existence with his explicit direct commandments. Deuteronomy
Hmm.
chapter 17, verse 8 through 11. And it's repeated again and again, all over the Torah, all over the Hebrew Bible. You know, it's understandable that somebody who doesn't spend much time studying the Torah wouldn't be so familiar with it, especially in the English speaking world, because they're mostly Christians. They focus on the New Testament. It's in the New Testament.
Well, okay, it's in there too, I guess. I guess this might be relevant. Then maybe we
It
should
is.
study
It's
this.
relevant for people who don't study properly and didn't begin
Hmm.
studying the book, the Bible, from the beginning, as you would any other book, but instead start studying with post-prophetic books, the New Testament, giving them greater weight than the foundation of the book. But even there, if you actually are a serious Christian, at least study your Bible and read it carefully and take it seriously and look for the most consistent way of understanding it possible. In the most famous, you could almost say notorious chapter in the New Testament, the one that is most commonly quoted by Jew haters is Matthew chapter 23. They always quote Matthew chapter 23, Jew haters, while conveniently just ignoring the first 3 verses in that chapter, which happen to be fairly significant verses. Before Jesus gives the scathing reproof of the hypocrites of the Pharisees, the hypocrisy of, really, it's not just of Pharisees. The point is not the Pharisees. The point is the hypocrisy and the misprioritization of different things in one's religious walk, prioritizing minutia over the big picture, over basic principles, faith, justice, mercy. But as he says in the middle of that chapter, after giving a scathing criticism of the hypocritical Pharisees, he says, all these minutia that you're so meticulous to do while not being careful with the main things, he said, all that minutia, even including tzitzit, fringes that Jews wear, and tefillin, the little black box, he mentions these. He says, all this minutia, which you're giving priority over the main things, those things you should not neglect from doing. He didn't say don't do it. He said don't. He said these things you should have done without neglecting these main principles, but you should have done them. He says you should do them. He didn't say don't. But even more importantly, back to the point, Jesus didn't need to say this. God already commanded it. If Jesus did not confirm this, if Jesus were to reject this teaching that it is a commandment of God that we heed the judges of Israel, he would be a false prophet or simply a heretic. So if you believe that Jesus was not a false prophet, if you believe he was not a heretic, well, you should take his word seriously. It begins chapter 23 of the book of Matthew with the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the place of Moses. Literally, it says the seat. This is a seat of authority. The same reason why we call a county, the capital of a county seat. It is the center of authority. It doesn't mean a literal chair that you're sitting in. He says that they sit in that seat of authority. Which seat of authority says it? The seat of Moses. It is the place of authority of Mosaic authority, which is exactly what is described in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, verse 8 through 11. And he says, therefore, all that they tell you should do, that you should do and observe.
That sounds a lot different.
Do and observe.
That sounds different than
not just
I
the
follow
written Torah.
I follow God only. I don't listen to men.
And that's a lie. You're not following God only if you keep 612 commandments, but you're not keeping that final one that you just happen to not like, because it will make you feel a little socially awkward in your uneducated local congregation, because your family is going to look down on you because now you're keeping the traditions of man as you sit down for your Thanksgiving turkey feast. No hate against turkeys, but be aware of your hypocrisy. Those Jews keep the traditions of men. Meanwhile, we're spending hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars decorating a Christmas tree and putting lights on for December 25th. Where did God command that? Anyway, let's let us delve into the commandments of men that God commanded us to heed without neglecting the big picture.
Oh, let me hit record here so we can record this.
Okay. I did not say this blessing before.
Nope.
So what's that?
I said we did not do that. You want me to?
No, I did not say this blessing before. The blessing for learning Torah. I haven't said this today yet, so I'm going to say it. Source of all blessing and most worthy of praise are you, O Eternal, the powerful authority over us, King of all existence, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us regarding the words of Torah. Imbue, O Lord our God, eternal, the powerful authority over us. Imbue your words of Torah within our mouths and in the mouths of your people, the house of Israel, that we shall be, we and our descendants, all of us, knowers of your name and studiers of your instruction, your Torah. Most worthy of praise and source of all blessing are you, O eternal, giver of the Torah. Source of all blessing, most worthy of praise are you, O eternal, the powerful authority over us, King of all existence, who has selected us from all peoples and has given us his Torah. Most worthy of praise are you, O eternal, giver of the Torah. Then we recite
Amen.
at least a few passages of Torah. So here we're going to say the Aharonic blessing, the priestly blessing from the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 22 through 27. I'm just going to say the core part here. The Eternal bless you and keep you. The Eternal cause his countenance to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Eternal lift up his countenance toward you and give you peace. And then we are going to read something from the Mishnah, as we're going to learn a little bit more about, and the continuation today from Maimonides' introduction to his commentary to the Mishnah. These are the things which the doing of them have no limit, meaning they are commandments to do, and no limit has been specified in the Torah, nor specified by the sages for how much you should do. The corners that you leave on the edges of your field for the needy, and the first fruit offerings, which are brought to the national temple, and the appearance in the temple, appearing in the temple, and the doing of benevolent deeds of devoted loving kindness toward others, with Talmud Torah and the study of Torah. All right, so let us continue for the prayer before entering a house of study, in our case, a digital house of study. Would you like to read the first phrase, Mr. Victor?
I can. I'm also trying to get the links out that I forgot to get out. So
no problem. I'll go ahead and continue myself. May it be your will before you, O eternal, the powerful authority over us, that I shall not stumble in a matter of halakha, that I not say regarding what is impure that it is pure, nor should I say regarding what is pure that it's not, nor should I say regarding what is permitted that is forbidden, nor should one say, nor myself say, regarding what is forbidden that is permitted, and in doing so, I shall not stumble in a point of proper implementation of your commandments, halakha. And my fellows shall rejoice with me, and they too shall not stumble in a matter of halakha, my fellows. And I shall rejoice with them, and so may it be his will. When Omar and everybody said, Amen.
Amen.
Are you with us, Habibi?
Yeah, I have it in. I was able to put the links in WhatsApp for those that want to join in. But I'm thinking I missed a couple places. But let's get to it. Okay. It'll be recorded and it'll get to them.
You want to continue, and I will just read these by myself.
Let's see. What number are we on anyway?
65, I believe. Maybe
66 through 78.
I'm going to begin. I'm kind of confused about these numbers. I can't tell if this
That's
is. I'm
yeah.
gonna turn it to Hebrew so I can see. Maybe it's more
Mhm.
clear in the Hebrew. Okay, now it's locked up. All right, let's see. We said 66 is where we're supposed to start.
Yep.
Okay, Zat Torah Zevach Shalomim. Okay, so this is 60. Oh, now it's realigned. It wasn't a moment ago.
Yeah, that's odd.
Okay, the peace offering, the first of this week's reading of 13 of the 613 everlasting conditions of God's everlasting covenant with the people of Israel. So the peace offering, as Leviticus chapter 7, verse 11 states, these are the laws of the peace offering. We're seeing here that commandments regarding the actual animal offerings in the temple are explicit commandments of God. They are not commandments of men, nor are they even the authorized commandments of men. They are the explicit commandments of God per the Torah, according to the Torah. Next commandment.
67. The meal op
67.
the meal offering, as Leviticus 2:1 states, when a person presents a meal offering.
Number 68. That the Supreme Council of the people of Israel shall offer a sacrifice if it renders an erroneous decision. As Leviticus chapter 4, verse 13 states, if the entire congregation of Israel shall err. So we
That
have
was our
recognition.
topic.
We have recognition in the Torah that the sages of Israel can err. No question. No question.
Yeah,
But
we only follow the infallible.
but if the eyes of the community
Hmm.
err, and then they're to make a offering,
Offering. Yeah.
that means that generally speaking, we're to follow them. That's just one more place. It also means, though, however, that God's commandment to follow them does not mean irrational allegiance without feeling free to investigate, study, and double check. But although we are free to disagree, we are not free to create uh, a society where it's every man for themselves. We're not free to create a society where, oh, I disagree. Now I will go around teaching everybody to do the exact opposite as a, just a blanket rule. No. Same thing in the United States. You may disagree with your politicians. You might rightfully disagree with your politician. But if something was passed into law, you can't just say that's not the law, even if you disagree with it. If you really disagree with it, the proper and legal manner by which to go opposing it is not to tell everybody disregard the law. You
Hmm.
can be arrested. That's against the law. You're telling people to rebel against American law. No, you might even be in the right, but the right and legal way to oppose it is to try to educate people, engage in discussions, and then to pursue getting people elected, getting politicians elected who perhaps can reverse the law. But the proper practice within the context of a legal system, a stable legal system, is not to just burn down the building when you disagree with something, even if you have a legitimate complaint, but rather to try to fix the system with education, with activism, so that you can get the right people into position to change what needs to be changed in a stable and legally legitimate way. All right, Miss Wahaba. Next commandment.
69. For each individual to offer a sin offering if he unintentionally violates a negative commandment, punishable by karet, being cut off unintentionally.
Right, there is no sacrifice in the temple for high-handed rebellious sin,
Right.
defiance. right? There is a difference. The Torah does distinguish, God's word does distinguish between different types of sin. I can't tell you how many times I heard growing up
Yeah.
in a Christian environment that all sin's the same, there's no difference. I'm sorry, but accidentally making a mistake on your tax returns is not the same as premeditated, intentional slaughter of a little girl. It's just not the same thing. You know, it's just,
Yeah. Yeah. They would plate that as, well, it cuts you off from heaven. You know, that single item would cut you off.
the
It's
Torah
their
does not just deal with heaven. And,
right.
and if we would study it, that would be readily apparent.
I didn't quite finish.
Oh, okay. Go
As
ahead.
Leviticus 5:1 states, when a person sins, bo'unamshi.
Very good. Bo'unamshich. Let's continue. Bo'unamshich. For an individual to offer an offering if he is in doubt whether or not he transgressed a prohibition for which he would be liable for a sin offering. As Leviticus chapter 5, verse 17 through 18 states, if he does not know, he still bears responsibility, and he shall bring his guilt offering. This is referred to as the conditional guilt offering, the asham talui. So this is where we get the idea that if you have a doubt regarding potential violation of a Torah commandment, you have an obligation to err on the side of caution if you have a doubt. If you don't have a doubt, or according to the guidelines of our sages, if you have a doubt on a doubt, that's not what this concerns. But if you have a first level doubt, then you should err on the side of caution. And if you did it anyway, and it's something that would, if it were actually a liability, would call for a sin offering, then you make a sin offering if you violated it, even though you have a doubt and you're not really sure. But if it's a doubt on a doubt, you do not have to. Right? As opposed to rabbinic law, where if you have a doubt, you should be lenient. All right, swahaba.
71, for the following individuals, a person who unknowingly used sacred property, a person who sinned by stealing, and one who had relations with a maidservant designated for another person, or one who denied possession of an entrusted object and took a false oath to bring a guilt offering. This is referred to as the unconditional guilt offering.
Let's continue. To offer the adjustable guilt offering as atonement for the violation of certain transgressions, as Leviticus chapter 5, verse 11, chapter 5, verse 1 and chapter 5, verse 11 states, if his means are not sufficient, continuing, if his means do not suffice. Next commandment.
73, for a person to confess before God for any sin which he has committed. This applies to when he brings a sacrifice for atonement and when he does not bring a sacrifice, as Numbers 5:6 states, and they shall confess the sins they have committed.
Okay. How do we say? Let's continue.
O'unamshi.
Got to do that last.
Yes, sir.
Last consonant sounds in Hebrew are very important. They can't be dropped off. Okay. For a zav to offer a offering when he becomes purified after his affliction, as Leviticus chapter 15, verse 13 states, when a zav will become pure. A zav refers to a person who had some sort of seminal emission, as opposed to a regular, normally what would be a nocturnal emission. This is not talking about a nocturnal seminal emission. Did I just say seminal emission? I think I just said the opposite of what I intended to say. A zav is not a normal seminal emission. It's an abnormal seminal emission. It is possibly not even semen, right? It's something abnormal coming from the same location. All right, means
75, for a zavah, to offer a sacrifice when she becomes purified after her affliction, as Leviticus 15:28 states, when she becomes pure from the condition of zavah.
Right, and this is the female parallel. It's an abnormal vaginal excretion. Sorry for the terminology. It does sound nicer in Hebrew, but we have to define the terms. All right. Number 76. For a woman who gave birth, to offer an offering after she becomes purified, as Leviticus chapter 12, verse 6 states, and after the conclusion of her pure days. Miswah haba'ah. What is miswah haba'ah?
Next commandment,
Nachon. That's right.
which is 77. For a person afflicted with za'arat,
Sara'at.
za'arat.
The accent on the middle accent. Sara'at.
Zara'at.
That's it. 3 syllables. The middle syllable is the accented one. And that
For a
is
person,
a sara'at is we don't know definitively what it is. It's often translated as leprosy or plague, but it's some sort of abnormal ailment that gets described in the Torah, but the way it gets described doesn't match. It doesn't match the diseases that people usually assume that it is. So we don't know for sure what it is. In Jewish tradition, it's normally related to as some sort of supernatural affliction of the skin.
and this
And
is
it's not a
something that basically is going to be keeping you out of the temple. Is that
yes.
the big deal with this is that this is cutting you off from entry into the temple?
Yeah.
That was
All
a
right.
question. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so let's read it again, knowing that sara'at is some sort of unusual affliction.
For a person afflicted with zara'at, to offer a sacrifice after he becomes purified, as Leviticus 14:1 states, on the 8th day he shall take.
All right, also let's file in the backs of our minds. If we see a TZ combination in a transliteration of Hebrew, do not pronounce it like a Z. I know this is the normative transliteration in the current era, but even the people that promulgate this Z transliteration, even they themselves do not pronounce it as a Z. There's no Z sound when they make it, which is why I think it's ridiculous that they do that, but that's what's commonly done. So if you see a TZ in any transliterated Hebrew word, any Hebrew word represented with English letters, when you see a TZ, do not pronounce it with a Z sound. It's a representation of Ashkenazi mispronunciation of Hebrew. This has become the norm in modern Hebrew, but that mispronunciation does not include a Z sound. Even their mispronunciation does not have a Z sound. They pronounce it like a TS sound. So if you want to transcribe, represent in English letters, the mispronunciation that is currently popular, you want to use a TS, not a TZ. But certainly you can't blame people who pronounce it with a TZ sound. Just letting you know that that is not how that's not how it's pronounced either in biblical pronunciation nor in the Ashkenazi pronunciation. They pronounce it as a TS, but then they will use a Z. This is coming from their habits of transcribing Yiddish into English. That's how you got the TZ making it sound, because Z's make S sounds in Yiddish, German influenced, of course. Not influenced, it's German based. That's also why the sound is represented with a CH. It's coming from the way that you would write in German. But English ain't German, right?
So they see a TZ, they would say the TS
Correct.
sound, but
Correct.
to them
Correct.
that indicates say TS, and to
TS
us
sound.
it says TZ.
Right. These transliterations are where these norms or principles of transliteration that are popularized by Ashkenazi Jews were created by people who spoke Yiddish, and it carried over into till now. So that even now, when now the majority of Ashkenazi Jews do not know Yiddish, they might know a handful of Yiddish words, even some phrases, but they don't know Yiddish. They can't read a Yiddish book and translate it for you. They don't know what it says. They're English speakers. But that's how it happened. However, now that we're at a point that even the people who, or the communities who came up with these transliterations, uh, even they themselves no longer follow those norms of speech. They don't speak Yiddish. So that now we're at a place where this doesn't even make sense to continue. It's just hard to break old habits, unfortunately. If you grew up in those communities, you know by habit, because you grew up in it, that this is a tsa sound. But if you're someone who's not from a community with a Yiddish background, you don't know, and you're going to think it's tza. And you're certainly going to make a z sound. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's better to do it with an S, and if you want to be very careful, you would put an S with an underline or an S with a dot under it.
So
The
other
letter
than the
small.
sounding, why is it more important that you lean S instead of Z? Is there a
Because the difference
there a
between S and Z in Hebrew is a substantial difference. For example, well, we had Zav. We had Zav here. If you made this a TZ sound, it would be turtle, Tzav. If you made it an S sound, if you made it an S sound and it were a S with a dot under it, that would be, well, that could be multiple things depending on, it's just a big mess. I don't want to get too
so
complicated.
the danger
A big mess.
is creating a new word that's
They're
actually
creating multiple words, but there's
yeah.
multiple ways to do it because the V also is a problem. They're transcribing the letter vet with no dot as a V, but the same tradition will also transcribe a vav as a V. So they transcribe different letters with one letter in English. It makes a mess. Stick with us and it'll make more sense as we go.
All right. Last one.
All right. Miswaha aharono. We don't continue to 79? Did we start with 66? Okay.
66 through 78.
Okay. To tie the one's herds, as Leviticus chapter 27, verse 32 states, and all the tithes of your cattle and sheep. Let us continue now to the main course. A little recap before we continue. All right, your turn to summarize. What are we looking at here?
On Rambam, or Maimonides' intro?
Yes. What intro to what? Who's Maimonides and intro to what for
Rambam.
anyone
Maimonides
who's
is
just
Rambam.
dropping in?
Yeah.
The review.
So there's two ways it's being presented. One is the introduction to his commentary on the Mishnah, but I think there's like book covers that also played it as Talmud.
Yeah, they do. But let's first tell us who Rambam is. Who is Maimonides? Maimonides / Rambam. Who is that?
He is, I don't really know his history too much, but he took the codified commandments, the oral commandments, oral law that has been passed down and was responsible to put it down in a logical way that can be understood. It's a complete work and
so till today, so Maimonides was a leader of the Jewish people who was born in Spain because of Islamic terrorists. Yes, they existed even back then. In the 11th century, was born in Spain in the 11th century. Wait, 10th century. Well, his life spanned. I don't remember the exact date that he was born and died, but I do know that it spanned the 1000s into the early 1100s, or late, like I think 11 teens or the 1120s is when he died, something like, or it may have been a little earlier, but he was in the 1100s as well. the latter part of his life. So he was born in Spain. He and his family were exiled from Spain to North Africa because they were fleeing Islamists that had invaded Spain. They moved to Morocco. He lived in Morocco. And then from Morocco, eventually they had to continue fleeing, and they fled all the way to Egypt. He lived in the land of Israel for a short time, but ultimately ended up in Egypt for the long term. Yes, there's a commandment in the Torah not to live in Egypt, but that doesn't that doesn't that doesn't include, that prohibition does not include when you are forced outside your will. Just as any commandment of the Torah, if you are coerced against your will, then you're not liable for that commandment. So he had no choice but to stay there because he was appointed as the medical consultant of the, what do you call it? Uh, basically the king. I forget the
Like the
term.
pharaoh, that's
No,
after the
it wasn't a
pharaohs?
pharaoh. No,
After the pharaohs, yeah.
no, I think it was Salah ad-Din. I think it was Salah ad-Din. Uh, let me double check real fast. Anyway, Maimonides is not a small figure in Jewish history. Uh, yeah, it was Salah ad-Din. I just think about that and I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of crazy because a lot
But
of
like a
people know.
sultan?
That's what I wanted to say. That was
Okay.
the word I was looking for. I hate it when I lose words. So he was the personal physician of Al-Qadi al-Fadil, uh, who is he he was a powerful visor to Salah ad-Din, but he also served Salah ad-Din and his entire family. Yeah, so he started off as being the personal physician of a vizier of Salah ad-Din, and then eventually became the personal physician of Salah ad-Din himself. So he was the Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt and Syria. So Rambam was stuck in Egypt. You
Mm.
cannot just say, "Oh, I'm not going to be your physician anymore." We're talking about a sultan. So he saw the struggles, the increase of struggles of the Jewish people, both in their um, unity as a people spread across from Western Europe all the way basically to India. There were probably already Jews in India. I'm not sure if they were completely aware of that, but they knew of Jews being all the way nearly to India. And he saw that certain divisions were beginning to arise, questions, confusions were beginning to arise, and mastery of the Torah and the rabbinic laws that we find in the Mishnah and the Talmud, mastery of these laws and the language in which they're given was beginning to wane. So what he did was he took it as his life mission to save the Jewish people by expressing these laws in an approachable, in an accessible way. He did this first by writing the language of the average man, the Jewish people at that time. So, of course, that meant he wrote it in Hebrew, right? No, wrong. First and foremost, he wrote this commentary to the Mishnah in the language of the average Jewish person at the time. What language was that? Was it Yiddish? No. Was it
Don't think
Aramaic?
so.
No, it was Arabic. He wrote it in Arabic. So the commentary to the Mishnah, which we're about to begin reading the introduction of, was written in Arabic. That is the first known complete commentary to the Mishnah of the Jewish people, was written in Arabic. His commentary, which we're studying the introduction to, his commentary is the oldest known extant commentary on the entire Mishnah. Of course, the Mishnah is the core of the ancient rabbinic explanations of how we keep the commandments of the Torah. It is the literary bedrock of rabbinic Judaism. A lot of people have heard of the Talmud, less people have heard of the Mishnah. But the Talmud is just a commentary on the Mishnah, and it is Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah that we are learning here today. So it was written in Arabic so that everybody of that time period could access it. He didn't say, oh, I need to write it in Aramaic because that's what everybody was doing before me. Or I need to write it in Hebrew because the Torah is written in Hebrew. He wrote it in a way that people could grasp something and where at whatever level they're at. And then after he did that, he made it his life's mission to codify Talmudic law in Hebrew so that even if eventually Arabic would stop being the lingua franca of the majority of the Jewish people, at that time Arabic was the majority language of the majority of Jewish people. So he codified the Talmud eventually in Hebrew so that with his foresight, during a time when Arabic is no longer the mother language of the Jewish people, still the entire Jewish people will have access to it. Why? Because although Arabic has an extreme amount of similarity to Hebrew, but it is not the national language of the Jewish people. He wrote his code, the only known, that's the only ever. We have no reason to think there was any other complete code of Talmudic law. He wrote it in Hebrew nearly 1,000 years before the re-establishment of the state of Israel. So showing that the linguistic identity of the Jewish people remained Hebrew even while we were under exile and under oppression of Islamic Arab supremacists. Hebrew was not some concoction of modern Zionists as a way to usurp Arab indigeneity in the land of Israel. No, Arab indigeneity is in Arabia, south of the land of Israel, possibly southeast as well, but not in the land of Israel. And this we see in the only complete code of Jewish law, which was written in Hebrew long before the so-called modern Zionist usurpation of Arabic. No, it's part and parcel of the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, from the beginning. And here we see it even in the Middle Ages when he made the Mishnah Torah. So his goal was to unite the people of Israel and give them big picture Judaism, that we will not be lost in the minutia of Talmudic discussion. The Talmud, the commentary on the Mishnah, goes into minute debate about minute details of Torah commandments. It's not a bad thing, but it's not meant for the everyday person. It's meant for scholars.
Right. That was what I was going to ask a clarification on, is that, a lot of people, when they look at passages in Talmud, they see a midrash and they blow up. Oh, this is horrible. How is Rambam's work different than say a work of midrash or thought? Is it more concrete, or is he
it's more
also
concrete,
putting
it's more
out
practical
opinions? Yeah.
And Torah, well, there's always going to be some degree of opinions, but there's a difference between legal opinion and
Consensus.
philosophical opinion. So in the covenant of Torah between God and Israel, the duty, the obligation of the covenant is to do the commandments. As long as your beliefs do not entail violating the commandments, you can practically believe whatever you want. It's not that it's wise or that you should just believe anything. That's not smart. And that itself could be said to be a violation, because we're supposed to be studious, not naive. Studious doesn't mean believing just anything, but beliefs are not codified in the Torah so much. only certain basic beliefs, such as that it happened, that the Torah was given. Of course, that's part of the Torah. But any belief that does not require violation of the Torah, that does not entail violation of the Torah, that belief is not a violation of the Torah, even if it's wrong. You can have a wrong belief that is benign. But you can also have beliefs that are not benign. You can have beliefs that do entail violating the Torah. So if you have a belief that entails violating the Torah, that is against the Torah. If you have a belief that doesn't, then it's benign.
It's inert. Yeah, right.
It's inert. It might be wrong, but it doesn't mean that you're breaking the covenant. So if you believe that the earth is flat, as long as your understanding of the earth being flat doesn't require you to break commandments, okay, that's great. Might be a little bit embarrassing. I guess they're not going to be embarrassed until they learn a little bit more about physics and astronomy, and that certain things that they think NASA came up with were known even before NASA existed. Various things. That's a different topic. But they can believe that the earth is flat. It's fine.
Not a problem.
I hope that you become a little more rational in your keeping of the Torah, but that's a different thing. But if your belief that the earth is flat means that you can face a certain direction during your prayers, even though the sages of Israel said something differently, well, now your particular type of belief in flat earth stuff, I don't want to be too insulting here, but I'm sorry. It's just so hard. But if your belief entails violating the instructions of the sages of Israel, at that point, it becomes contrary to Torah. And it's possible for people to have multiple types of beliefs of a particular topic. If your belief in Jesus is that he nullified the commandments or he changed the commandments, even one detail, then your belief in Jesus violates the Torah. If your belief in Jesus is that he was a heretic, and you're not, let's say Jesus was, hypothetically, Jesus was a kosher Jew, but you don't know that. And all you see is the Jesus presented by Christianity. And you're rejecting that Jesus. If that belief that Jesus was a heretic doesn't make you violate Torah, then you're not violating Torah. There is a difference between rejecting a presentation of someone, which is unacceptable, even if it's a misrepresentation of that person. But when they reject the person, they're rejecting the misrepresentation. The person who's rejecting is not rejecting the historical person. They're rejecting what they've been presented. If you're presented with a Jesus that replaces Jewish people and changes even one detail of the Torah, that's a false prophet. You would be violating Torah for not rejecting that. But if someone accepts Jesus, but their concept of Jesus is a Jesus who makes himself out to be God, demands that humans worship a human being, or that he's not God, but he changed even one detail of Torah, their belief in Jesus is a violation of Torah. So these are just examples. You can apply this to all sorts of things. Same thing with Muhammad. If your belief doesn't entail breaking the Torah, it's fine. I'm not saying it's smart, but you're not breaking the covenant per se.
There are kosher ways of having an opinion on Jesus that are not in conflict with.
I prefer to not say kosher, but
yeah, I know.
But for
correct
lack
or,
of a better word, I guess
yeah,
benign is probably a better word. Benign. And it's important that Jews understand these differences, because when they don't understand these differences, they may appropriately reject Christian beliefs while thinking that some other rabbi who basically says the same exact things is acceptable for the mere fact that his name isn't Jesus. So you can have another Jewish person who teaches basically the same things that Christianity teaches, but because they use different terminology, suddenly now it's okay. No, you need to understand why something is a problem. And when you understand why something is a problem, you can also understand when something is not a problem. But it's very difficult to do that when the average Jewish person isn't given the tools to have a holistic understanding of Torah Judaism that you can only get by actually mastering the text of the Torah and learning the Mishneh Torah, or at least Shulchan Aruch. At least they don't do that. People say they follow Shulchan Aruch, but they hardly ever learn it. That's a different topic. So let's get into it.
All
We
right.
are starting the Rambam's commentary to the Mishnah and chapter 7, I believe you said. Yeah.
Well, 6, I believe, is what we were looking at.
I know we were looking at that
Finish
before,
it.
and I do remember that we had finished it.
Okay.
Normally, this shows our need for Hodaya. She helps keep us
Well, I
on.
hate to say it, but she's the one that said 6 this morning.
Oh, that we start 6? Okay.
No, it's that we were somewhere in 6, she thought, and
We
actually
ended
that
6.
was
We finished 6.
we
So
did.
we're
Okay.
going to
Did the bottom of page 117, did we cover that? Because if you look at the bottom of 117, that's 126.
I'm gonna have to move Zoom stuff to zoom out. I don't see the button. This, okay. Page 117, you said?
Yeah. There we go. Back up. Whoop.
Here?
Oh.
Are you talking about this 117 or
Yeah,
this
that's the one I was
117?
looking at. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not that.
There we go.
This,
Did we do that?
I don't remember.
I don't remember doing it.
But I do remember going through chapter 6 and I remember reaching the end. So I assume we did it. It could be that we made a mistake and skipped over it. I think we should just continue. So
Okay.
all right, is that large enough? Let's
Yeah.
go. And you can read the first 2 chapters. Feel free to stop at any point because it's just you and I. So less voices here. So feel free to make conversation.
At this point, Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi thought it sufficient in tracing the list of the main line of the transmitters of the tradition, starting from himself, to go only as far back as Shimon Har Tzaddik. Rebbe Yehuda's words presented in the Mishnah are brief, yet they encompass many concepts. Though because of his mental acuity, they were clearly plain to Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi himself. Nevertheless,
the accent will be on the I, Nasi.
Nasi.
Yeah, and Ribi.
Ribi. Okay. All right.
Let's do it again. Ribi.
Ribi.
Yehuda.
Yehuda's words.
The accent on the da. Ribi Yehuda. Hanasi.
Ribi Yehuda Hanasi.
That's it. Say it again. Habibi.
Ribi.
One more time.
Ribi Yehuda.
Ribi. Accent the final syllable. Ribi.
Ribi Yehuda Hanasi.
All right.
Himself, nevertheless, as time went on to those of lesser greatness, the concepts became more difficult to grasp as the ancient sages had composed their works at their own level. And I want to pause for a second and to compare this to today, how far less great we are at today's level of understanding of even Rambam so far.
But the Rambam intentionally tried to simplify the text. So although there are
We're
some
not even at
complex
that simple
concepts,
level. Yeah. Well, I
right?
mean, most of us.
And
Victor.
why is it, why did I want us to get his name right? It'd be Yehuda Hanasi. Who is this guy?
Uh, he sat he sat in the seat of Moses, right?
Right. So he was the Nasi, the president
Hmm.
of the Supreme Council of the people of Israel of his generation. So he was the head of the Great Sanhedrin, in other words, of his generation. Albeit it was a Great Sanhedrin that was exiled from the Temple Mount. So that's part of the controversy of what he did. The Mishnah was actually controversial at first because they had never made such a code. And the reason they hadn't made such a code is because the Sanhedrin was supposed to be a living entity. Once you codify it, then if you change something, well, the people with the code will be more likely to question the change. But it's the court that has the authority, not the code. So you see what I'm saying? So then
Yeah.
it becomes a problem. But he did it for the same reason that Rambam did it, and Rambam Maimonides, whose commentary we're reading, did what he did with the Mishnah Torah for the same reason that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi created the Mishnah. That's because of a concept called et la'asot l'Hashem. Sometimes when you're faced with a reality that if you do not break the norm, even if the norm is the law, sometimes you're faced with reality that if someone doesn't break the law in order to prevent a greater loss, then the law defeats its purpose.
Like a prophet going up on a mountain and offering
Correct.
bulls on top of high places.
Right. He offered a bull on a high place, Elijah the prophet. He offered
Mhm.
it to God. He didn't violate the law of idolatry, but he did violate the Torah commandment regarding making offerings outside the temple premises. But he did that because the reality was if he didn't make some kind of public show at that point, then the Jewish people would have remained lost to idolatry. Another instance may be um, if you have it's kind of like the difference between the khatila and badi'avad, doing something in an ideal way and doing something in a less ideal way, but when you have no other choice. So let's say if the law is that school teachers have to have a degree in education, that could be the law. But once you see that the reality on the ground is that there are no people with a degree in education. So is it better that your kids just not have any teacher, or is it time to bend the rules, at least temporarily, until we can get something better? If you're unwilling to bend, then it's going to break. Sometimes you have to bend. Sometimes you have to bend. And that's basically what's going on here. We're not saying that the Mishnah is the ideal. That's a big problem because in the Jewish religious establishment, it's become that the status quo is considered the ideal. But the Mishnah was never intended to be the ideal. It was never intended to replace the Great Sanhedrin. But as a temporary measure, it was created. Same thing with the Mishneh Torah and Maimonides, right? Let's get back into our text. So it was important to learn how to say his name because he's a key character in Torah Judaism. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi essentially saved the Jewish people by saving Jewish tradition, the tradition of the sages of Israel, and um, during a time when we began to be super scattered. So that's that's his importance. He is the one who's responsible for the codifying of the Mishnah. Right? Rabbi Hiya. تمشيخ ببطشة.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Well, is it Rabbi or Rabbi?
Rabbi, Rabbi.
Rabbi
Anytime you see an I in Hebrew that's
E.
transliterated, the I's are E's pretty
Right,
much all
right.
the time. This transliteration of this guy is pretty inconsistent. We talked about that before. But the I's are pretty consistently an E sound.
So we had Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, and now we have Rabbi.
Right.
Hiya, Hiya. One of Rabbi's disciples thereupon decided to compose a text in which he would follow after his master's work, explicating
Meaning explaining.
that which might not be easily comprehended from his master's own words. This is the Tosefta.
Literally means addition.
And its purpose is to clarify the Mishnah and add insights which cannot be extracted from the Mishnah without toilsome research. He
Right,
brought these
Mishnah.
matters,
A lot of
Mishnah.
these, a lot of these have the accent on
Yeah.
the. And the Tosefta is older than the Talmud.
Mm-hmm. To clarify that the Mishnah and add insights which cannot be extracted from the Mishnah without toilsome research. He brought these matters to the surface to instruct us as to the method of contriving and deriving concepts from the Mishnah.
All right. Rabbi Hosea wrote similar works in a similar vein as Rabbi Hiya. These works being called Baraitoth, right? Baraitoth from the Aramaic word bara. It's also the same word, by the way, in Arabic, which means outside. So these are external words. Rav also composed a type of baraita, right? An external work, meaning external to the Mishnah. And Rav's work is called the Sifra. Sifra is from the Aramaic word for book, right? In this case, referring to a commentary, not on the Mishnah, but on directly as a commentary on the book of Leviticus in the Torah. He also wrote Sifri, which is just the plural in Aramaic for books. And he wrote on the fourth and fifth books of the Pentateuch, that is the Chumash, the Torah. So these are commentaries that Rav wrote on the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy. So we have ancient rabbinic commentary on the Torah, but of a specific style. So these are legal commentary. It's not like it's not as much like a philosophical or homiletical. Not as much like a philosophical or allegorical commentary, but rather legal. Many others also compose such works, as is evidenced in the Talmud, wherever it states, when Rabbi XYZ came, he brought a baraita with him, meaning with himself. So when you're studying the Talmud, which is the most popularly known commentary on the Mishnah, when the Talmud refers to a baraita, it's talking about similar such works of different rabbis. So these are like smaller works, but they do get referred to in the Talmud. Excuse me.
And their authority?
They are considered authoritative in difference to the Mishnah and the Talmud. That means they're considered authoritative, more authoritative than like random person today, even more authoritative than the opinions of a great sage alive today. But their authority does not usurp the authority of the Mishnah or the authority of the Talmud itself when the Talmud records a consensus opinion of sages. But it does have authority. There are different levels of authority. So it's not like black and white. Something is like either God or not God, but rather we have God, and then we have the authority of the sages below God. But we're not talking about random people. We're talking about authorized sages. Sages were authorized to teach by the great council that God commanded us to heed. And then underneath them, we have lower level. And then at the very, very bottom, we have, well, I got a feeling. And at my church, we call that feeling God spoke to me. That's like at the very bottom. You know, if you're actually saying God spoke to you, you need to be careful, because you really do need to be careful, because you're saying God spoke to you. You're basically establishing yourself as a prophet. And I interact with Christians here. I'm in the Bible Belt, and I have a lot of Christian friends. I think they're good people, but they are very, very uneducated 9 times out of 10, very uneducated. As they start becoming more substantially educated, they usually start becoming heretics. You know what I mean? They start getting outside the establishment norms of belief. But in my interactions with Christians, it's common among evangelical Christians, at least. I think it's less among Catholics. They have another problem of giving authority to, you know, their Catholic church leaders. But it's kind of funny because among evangelical Christians, they're often about Bible alone, but then they will resort to God spoke to me, and that suddenly becomes an authority in addition to the Bible. They're establishing themselves as prophets. They may not even call themselves a prophet, but when you say that God told me XYZ, you're saying you're a prophet. If you say that God told me XYZ and that thing is contrary to the Torah, you're a false prophet. You're
All
a
right.
false prophet.
So
Yes, sir.
let's say I'm reading and you do kind of get a voice or a you
Insight.
hear you yes. What is a proper way of packaging that?
Yeah.
Does it conflict
If you feel
with
like God is
Torah? Yeah.
speaking to you or something, but you did not actually hear directly from God, do not say you heard from God. I know that, I mean, I've never encountered a case where I'm certain that God spoke to these people. Never.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it can't happen, but I've never, ever gotten the impression that God actually spoke to these people because 9 times out of 10, what they say doesn't jive with the Torah.
Right.
Or it's ambiguous and just not convincing. But 9 times out of 10, it's just completely flies in the face of the Torah.
Yeah. What are
And I
they
just
hearing? Their
smile
conscience, their insights, their
so what they're really
rationalizations.
experiencing, I'm sure they're experiencing something, but I think it's just really a hunch, or maybe something in their intellect, but
Mhm.
they're confusing their own opinion with God.
Right.
Just because you have a strong conviction doesn't mean God told it to you. Oh, that's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah,
Man.
especially when you look at
No
what
wonder they have 1,000 denominations. Everybody's a prophet.
yeah, yeah. The
I
Lord
cut
Lord
you off.
told
I'm
me.
sorry.
The Lord told me. No,
Gosh,
it's
it's
just
so bad.
yeah, it is. It's dangerous. It's very widespread. So it seems
It's
like
kind of
it
arrogant.
seems fine, but in reality, you're like going, you have no idea what you're saying. And I don't mean to be so mean at them, but they don't realize. It's really more of a. It's not a high-handed thing. It's
I don't
done
think
in
it's high-handed
ignorance.
either because
Yeah,
they have not been taught.
right,
I'm
right.
sorry,
They haven't
my
seen it.
accent's
They
all over the
haven't
place.
seen where in the plain text that this is a problem. So they
Holy
perceive it
smokes.
as a great thing. But anyway,
I think it comes from an idea that they're in the new covenant,
mm,
and in the new covenant there are uh, to be well when the new covenant's on a national level, which they or people who have taught them have seen certain prophecies translated to English, and they see uh, that there'll be like visions and prophesying. So because it's like a given in Christianity, it's an axiom. They start at this point. So you don't even have to make an argument for it. It's just a given. They assume it that we're in the new covenant because obviously Jesus came. So this is the new covenant. And then when they see verses that say there'll be visions and prophecies and everything and prophets, well, then we must have that. If we don't have it, maybe we're not in the new covenant. So we must have that. Um, so if they get an inkling, oh, that must be the prophecy. Uh, they haven't read the prophecies regarding the new covenant enough because the prophets state that in the new covenant, on the national level, no man will any more say to his neighbor, know the Lord, for they shall all know me from the least to the greatest.
is
Why
that
do these same
10,000
people,
denominations or everybody's on the
yeah,
same page?
right. It also, I mean, for the Jewish people, at least for their sake, I also have to ask, because we get annoyed all the time with, being hammered with the the false gospel packaged as the gospel. It's a false gospel. Any gospel quote unquote, any good news or God message, which is really the etymology of gospel, it's God spiel, it's the message of God. Any divine message that contradicts the Torah ain't the divine message. That's not gospel, that's false gospel. The gospel is the Torah. The Torah is the gospel. Any legitimacy of the gospel of Jesus is in its presenting the Torah, simply presenting it in a more palatable way that people could relate to, but not as something new. If you're adding on things, that ain't gospel. That is heresy. What was I getting at before? I forget where I was going with that. Oh yeah. So if they're actually in the new covenant on a universal level, why is it that these same people who get these visions and false prophecies, why is it that they're so big on missionaries, especially missionaries to Jewish people? Like, I do understand their good intentions. They don't want people to go to hell, but maybe they should worry about themselves first. Jeremiah chapter 31 through chapter 30 through 31 makes it very clear that the new covenant is with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And you shall not say anymore, know the Lord, for they shall all know me from the least to the greatest. If you're in the new covenant, the Jewish people are the last people who need missionaries. Send the missionaries to the non-Jews. Like, I get mail. Most of the mail that I get in my position as a rabbi here locally is from Christians trying to bring me the gospel, God's message. I'm sorry, is the Torah scroll in your congregation or mine? I would like to know which churches in the area publicly read from the Hebrew text of the Bible, the original language of the Bible, and know what they're reading. Which one? Where is it? It is, oh my gosh, it's just so mind-blowing. Let's get back to the text, Habibi. So mind-blowing. Your turn.
Rabbi
Tua Shofar.
Yehoshua, Rabbi,
I believe we're right here. Can you see my cursor?
however,
Yes, sir.
yeah, we're down here. Okay. However, none of these above described Bereithas were equal to the Mishnah in eloquence, clarity, and brevity. Therefore, the Mishnah was the basic text to which all the other works were secondary and subordinate. It being the work unanimously esteemed over all the others. So it's a Beretha, and of course they have it as Beresos. So is it a double T there?
It's a
Berethos?
TH sound with a
Berethos?
tav without a dot.
No S is anywhere in sight.
Bereitheth.
Berethos. Thank you. When they compared it to the other works, daughters saw it and praised it, queens and concubines, and they acclaimed it. Song of Songs 6:9. Everyone who succeeded it and all who succeeded that esteemed assemblage put his heart and endeavors to nothing but scrutinizing the words of the Mishnah. Generation after generation did not cease scrutinizing it, analyzing it, explaining it. Every scholar, commensurate with his wisdom and perception, but commensurate with the many years that passed, the later sages eventually diverged on the interpretation of some of the laws. There was no assemblage which did not examine and analyze the Mishnah, uncover new laws, and apply it to comparative cases, using it as its source up to the time of Ravina and Rav Ashi, the last of the Talmudic sages.
All right. And that concludes chapter 7. So that was an introduction to the concept of Baraitot. So let's summarize it. Baraitot also known as brises in the Ashkenazi Jewish world, refers to early pre-Talmudic, this is before the Talmud, early commentary by Jewish legal authorities, commentary on the commandments of the Torah, right? And
Common for the day. In other words, there's probably a lot of people writing little pieces. Is that right?
we use the term in reference to legal authorities. They were authorized by the Great Sanhedrin. Even though it was exiled, it's what we had. It was the
Yeah.
highest court of Jewish scholars at the time, even though it was exiled from the Temple Mount. May it be restored speedily in our days.
Right.
But that is what a Baraita is. They did not become the core focus of Jewish law because they were not as organized or eloquent as the Mishnah. But it's not that they have no value. They have a lot of value. So anytime the Mishnah is unclear to us, we can consider what is recorded as a Baraita, as a external rabbinic authority commentary on the mitzvot, on the commandments. They sometimes also refer to rabbinic laws, but the ones that we just talked about, the most prominent ones are specifically on the Torah, on the text of the Torah. That is the Sifri and the Sifra and the Tosefta. And so Baraita is from a Semitic root word that means outside. So it's essentially like saying apocryphal in a way. It's kind of like saying apocryphal, but without the connotations of apocrypha. It's kind of like how these are historical works, they have value, but it's just not up to par with the Mishnah text, right?
Yeah.
So your turn. You summarize now. What is a Baraita?
Um, text by authorized stages, authorized by the court of that accompany or complement, maybe it's the right way to say it. Well, let's see. Baraita would be complementing the Talmud or the Mishnah.
The Mishnah mostly. This is pre-Talmud.
Oh,
But it
yeah,
does
yeah.
complement the Talmud, even though they're earlier than the Talmud, because the
I
Talmud
always
makes
hear them.
extensive use of it.
I hear it related to when in discussions of Talmud, someone
I'm
say, "Well,
telling you
there's a
why.
Baraita." Yeah,
It's
yeah.
because the Talmud makes extensive use of it.
Right.
That's
Okay.
the reason.
And versus Tosafot or Tosefta.
Don't confuse Tosefta with Tosafot.
Yeah.
Those are two different things.
Okay. The
They're
Tosefta.
Tosefta and Tosafot both have a name that comes from the same Hebrew root word, which means something added. But they are two completely separate works, completely different, written by different people at different times and different locations.
And I meant
So,
the Tosefta. So
so
how would
Tosefta is
that
the
differ?
ancient. The Tosefta is the ancient Baraita, and that is a work that's similar to the Mishnah. It follows a similar order of the Mishnah, and it's based on the Mishnah. And that's as opposed to the Sifri and the Sifra, which serve a similar purpose but are not following the order of the Mishnah. Those follow books of the Bible,
Okay.
right? Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
Mm-hmm.
Is different from Tosafot. Tosafot, which a lot of people usually learn about. They usually know of Tosafot, but they don't know about the Tosefta, which is older and more authoritative. So Tosfos, that is from the same root word. It means added, but completely different. And what it refers to are the added commentaries on the Talmud by the students and grandchildren of Rashi, who is the most highly esteemed commentator on the Torah and the Talmud among Ashkenazi Jews. Unfortunately, the norm among Ashkenazi Jews, and even among some very Ashkenazi-fied non-Ashkenazi Jews, the normal sentiment among them is that Rashi is the most important, the greatest, and most respected commentator on the Torah and the Talmud. But people should know, Ashkenazi Jews should know, that however great he was, and I no doubt think he was a great commentator and should
For
certainly
sure.
be respected, but it is disrespectful to people alive today to imagine and act as if only their community exists. Rashi is not the greatest and most highly esteemed commentator on the Talmud or on the Torah among all Jews. He is the most highly esteemed among the establishment of Ashkenazi Jewish communities. But there are Jews who are not Ashkenazi.
Sure.
You didn't lose me.
There you are.
I don't want to go back to Head and Shoulders because it has like stuff that my eczema's not great with. Yeah, I get skin reactions in my hands from Head and Shoulders shampoo. So I'm using a it's supposed to be like good for people with eczema scalp shampoo stuff, but I don't think it's working. So every now and then I'm closing it so I can scratch my head like crazy because I'm
Okay.
like, man, this stuff's not working. But that's what's happening. I'm gonna do it again.
Okay.
I just don't want people to think it's snowing in Louisiana.
Oh, please. All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. To tell you a little story. I'm in the shower this morning and I look and I have two bottles of shampoo and I got a newer one. Well, my other one was starting to run out, so I grabbed the new one and stuck it in there, and it was like this. The new one is down here, and I'm thinking those dirty guys. They removed a few ounces and used a smaller bottle. And then later I looked at the bottom, and the bottom was because the other one was sitting up on
Oh, that's funny.
sitting. I was thinking, well, there you go. I was falsely accusing.
Yeah.
But anyway, but it's not Head and
Ayala.
Shoulders. Okay.
So we can continue now. I mean, it was pretty short. Let's continue to the next chapter.
Yeah, I wish I had a little better uh grasp on all of that because I've
On all of what?
the different pieces that kind of accompany the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah walk, we're very, I came into this very focused on, all right, we've been missing, my desire to obey Torah is how I discovered, oh, there's a Mishnah and it's super
Right.
important.
Well, the
And
Mishnah
but then
is
there's
certainly the core. Is certainly the core.
absolutely
You do not have to master all these
no,
texts.
no,
It would be great if we did, but that's like saying it's great if we memorize every word of the Bible. Of course, it's great to memorize every word of the Bible. It's not realistic.
yeah. So the Tosefta would be like, for instance, I would be studying Torah and then and Mishnah, Talmud, I'm sorry, Tanakh and then Mishnah. But the Tosefta would be the next closest item. I wouldn't be jumping in the Talmuds or Bereithas necessarily, possibly a Bereitha, but uh like
If we're learning properly,
yeah,
you're right. That's correct. But in the average yeshiva, Jewish religious seminary, that's not what they do. Most religious Jews who have learned in yeshiva their entire lives never looked at the Tosefta or the Sifra or they don't look at these books. It's they also hardly ever pick up a Mishneh Torah. They know about Mishneh Torah. It's not like they reject it the way that Christians reject the Quran. It's nothing like that. They've heard of these books. It's not that they don't know that they exist, but they don't study them. And when you understand the size of the Talmuds, you can understand why. It's
yeah,
just so enormous, so enormous. That's why getting it right from an early age is important. All right, let's continue. We're going to chapter 8. Tur Shalcha, your turn.
related sources to chapter 8. All of the sages mentioned were the greatest sages of their generations. Some of them were heads of academies, some of them were leaders of far-reaching communities, and some were of the great Sanhedrin existing throughout the generations. Besides these sages, in each and every generation were thousands and 10,000s of others who studied with and under them. Among these were Ravina and Ravashi, the last of the sages of the Talmud. Tens of thousands.
Well, of course. Oh, this is what's going on here.
The Gemara.
That I think this is.
Oh, you can keep going. No, just scroll with it. There you go.
Yeah, it wasn't scrolling for some reason. I was trying.
The
Okay.
Gemara.
Time for me to get a new computer. The Gemoira. The Gemoira.
Yeah.
All right. So what is the
Ash-
Gemara? The Gemara is the so well, most of our viewers have heard of the Talmud, the Talmud. So the Talmud, from the root word for study, the Talmud is essentially a text which is built upon the Mishnah. So it contains the Mishnah. The Talmud is not just a different text from the Mishnah. The
Yeah.
Talmud contains the Mishnah, but it's not only the Mishnah. So the way it's structured is it will take a excerpt from the Mishnah. It'll have like a 1 or 2 line quote section, like the Mishnah equivalent of a verse as opposed to chapter. It'll put 1 or 2 lines of the Mishnah, and then it will give a 2 to 3, sometimes 4 or 5 long, paragraph long commentary on that verse of the Mishnah. So it's simply an exhaustive, mostly legal commentary on the Mishnah. That is what the Talmud is. When we say Gemara, what we're referring to is the commentary portion on the Mishnah. Whereas when we say Talmud, we're talking about the Mishnah with the commentary under it. So Talmud and Gemara are almost synonymous, but there is a difference. There is a
So
difference.
can you see the page I'm sharing?
It's kind of small.
Okay. But I mean, it's I believe it's a page from Talmud, and
Yeah.
so I think right here in the center would be the Mishnah portion. Is that right?
Not the entire center.
Okay.
You see, don't move your cursor. Do not move your
Let's
cursor.
see this one right here. Okay.
Do not move your cursor.
Okay.
Immediately underneath your cursor, you should see a bolded 2 letters right there. That's where the Gemara begins.
Oh yeah, I see that. GM
For Gemara.
Gimel
It's an
Mem for
acronym.
Gemara.
Right. So that is the commentary on there's a person. That is the commentary on the Mishnah. Above it is the actual.
I can't hear you, but
You can't hear me?
well, I think you stepped away from the mic.
I might have to leave. I'm sorry, leave the computer.
There we
Give me a minute or 2.
Okay.
Okay. So here we're seeing the structure of what the Talmud looks like. So the Talmud is basically a reference to any book that has this layout consisting of the Mishnah, and then underneath the Mishnah, you will have the commentary of the oldest exhaustive commentary on the Mishnah, which is called the Gemara. Gemara is from Semitic root word, which means the completion. So it's like completing, or I like how you said it, complementing the Mishnah. And then
So
around
just
it,
this small section.
the
Yeah.
outer rings are commentaries on the Talmud. Okay, so essentially the outer rings are commentaries on commentary.
Uh, so Mishnah being the older sages direct from with direct Samika, and then you
Smicha.
have Samika, and then you Gemaras are just slightly after that, and then it moving outwards. In other words, the more
You start to
current
get into the Middle
information,
Ages, the early Middle
yeah,
Ages, and then the mid-Middle Ages.
Rashis and
And,
Rambams,
and
and
you start getting more variability in the publications of the Talmud on the outer edges. But the inner circle is going to be the same in pretty much any publication. Excuse me. Did I keep off? All righty. Let's continue. So now we know what the Gemara is. How about you summarize it? How's it different from Talmud?
it's part of the Talmud. That was a trick question. So
So
it
they're often used interchangeably. Gemara and
okay,
Talmud are often used interchangeably, but there is a difference. There
yeah.
is a difference.
So the Talmud has is centered around the Mishnah. The
The Talmud
Gemara.
is the Mishnah with the Gemara. That's Talmud.
Okay, so
It's
you're
the
saying all
Mishnah
the
with
outer rings are Gemara?
no,
Okay,
no. Only so the outer rings are commentary on the Gemara.
okay.
The Gemara is uh, the earliest exhaustive commentary on the Mishnah, whereas the Talmud refers to the text that has both the Mishnah and the Gemara in it.
It's interesting that the Talmud is a very extensive page when you're actually looking at it, but you're saying that the Talmud literally is just that center section.
Yes,
Okay,
yes. But
okay.
colloquially, it's any text that contains those two. As long as it contains the Mishnah and the Gemara, people will call that a Talmud,
Well, that's fine. That's fair.
even if it doesn't have Rashi in it or something on the outer rings. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't include the Mishnah and it's just the Gemara, that's not called Talmud. Gemara is Gemara. That's just the commentary on the Mishnah.
Okay.
Okay?
Before we leave this topic, though, we have the Mishnah and the Gemara right there in the middle of this page.
Yes.
And when someone says, "Well, it says in the Talmud," and they're referring to something over here in one of the columns or an opinion or something else.
Sometimes people conflate those outer ring commentaries with the Talmud.
And
More
and
times than
it's
not.
yeah.
That's
Is
a
there
problem
any
of accuracy.
problematic? Are they going to find problematic items in the center? Are we gonna go in there and say so? Oh, they believe this, or is it
I'm not
basically going
sure
to
what you mean
be?
by problematic. You got to give me more context.
Well,
Problematic to who?
they're like well
Who's the
the
they?
Talmud
Wait,
says that they sleep with 3-year-olds, that kind
Okay,
of
so
stuff.
you're talking about non-Jews who don't know much about.
Haters,
Okay.
basically. Yeah. So are they pulling any of this out of the centered Gemara area?
The majority of those quotes from the Talmud, and notice
Mm-hmm.
they don't usually say Gemara because they don't even know Gemara exists. They don't
Mm-hmm.
they don't care about nuance. So they usually say Talmud. They'll have like a list of ridiculous quotes from
Mm-hmm.
the Talmud, the evil Talmud. Most of those quotes are either not in the Talmud or completely made up. And some of them are just completely flat out made up. Some of them are actual quotes, but not in the Talmud at all.
Mm.
Some of them are from books way, way after the Talmud, which are not highly esteemed by the majority of Jewish people. Most Jews don't even know they exist. Some of them are actual quotes from the Talmud, but they either based their quote on a terrible translation or they warped the translation, like edited it, in addition to just completely ignoring the entire context, because we're talking about like one phrase or one sentence quote. They never give the entire context. But what's most important that people remember is that majority of these Talmudic quotes are not from the Talmud at all. At
Okay.
all. And even if they were in the Talmud is not a list of laws. The Talmud mostly contains debates. Even if these ridiculous things were in the Talmud, and most of it is not, but even if it was, so what? That doesn't mean that that's the final law. The
Right.
Talmud also has opinions that Messiah already came. That's in the Talmud. The Messiah already came. How many Jews have you met who think that the Messiah already came? But it's in the Talmud.
Hmm.
There's also an opinion in the Talmud that the Messiah will never come. How many Orthodox Jews have you met think that the Messiah will never come? There are multiple opinions. There are all kinds of opinions in the Talmud.
Sure.
Just because you give a one sentence quote from the Talmud doesn't mean you know crap. It really doesn't. It's like pulling out a sentence out of a newspaper and saying that this is what Americans believe.
I don't have
Are
an
you an idiot?
example. I don't have an example, but I do recall reading Mishnah and seeing something that was teaching this over here, but it was talking about this, and I didn't recognize that it's plating this idea to serve another purpose. In other words, to teach another concept that I was missing, and it was like whoosh, way over my head. And I'm thinking,
So the
and that's
Talmud is mostly a legal text, but there's a difference between being a legal text and being a code of law. The Talmud is not a code of law. It contains laws for those that accept it,
Mhm.
but it is not a list of laws. The laws that it contains for those who accept it, those laws are mixed in a text which is overwhelmingly not law. They are dispersed in the midst of tens of thousands and tens of thousands of pages of discussion, debate, rejection, hypothetical scenarios.
Sure.
It's not, so by code of law, I mean organized, listed. It is not that. That is not the Talmud. Nobody who has the faintest clue of what the Talmud is thinks that. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like somebody coming at the New Testament and uh and trying to act like it's a text of astronomy because it says the stars fell out of heaven in one verse. And somebody like making fun of the New Testament as a book of astronomy, as it like seriously thinking it's a book of astronomy, being oblivious to the fact that anybody who knows anything about the New Testament knows that it is not a book on astronomy. And even if it happens to mention stars, it's not intending actual stars. Like that's just not the topic nor the purpose of the book. Anybody who brings these kinds of quotes show themselves to be a complete idiot and an imbecile and a hater. Let's keep going, Habibi. And ain't nobody got time for that.
Mm-mm.
Let's keep reading.
Okay.
Tur Shalcha, your turn.
Are we at the beginning here, Rob?
Yes, we were describing what the Gemara is as opposed to what it's not. It's a major part of the Talmud, but it is not by itself the Talmud. It's the commentary section of the Talmud. Yes, sir.
Rav Ashi devoted himself to composing the Gemara and decided to do with the words of all who came after Rabbeinu Hakadosh,
Our holy teacher, our holy rabbi.
which would be who?
Maybe Yehuda Hanasi.
Hmm.
That's another way of referring to it. It'd be Yehuda Hanasi.
What Rabbeinu Hakadosh did with the words of all those who came after Moses. He collected all the words of those spokesmen and deliberations of the thinkers and explanations of the commentators and the legal intricacies. He gathered and mastered it all with the wisdom granted him by the Holy One, blessed be he, of a humble soul and glory of wisdom, and he composed the Gemara. He intended to accomplish four goals. Number one, to explain statements by the Mishnah by recording the divergent opinions as to its intent. What's that divergent opinions? That means there's more
Diversion
than one
means,
opinions.
yes, exactly.
Well, stating the obvious. B, recording the arguments of each interpreter against his colleague. So they were arguing, so to speak. And C, recording the disclosure of the correct opinion. This was his foremost goal. So it wasn't a battle or a fight or someone trying to win an opinion. It was more discussing all the different ways of looking at it, an item, and then to show those opinions, but then with the goal of declaring here's the correct opinion.
Yes, the Mishnah does not contain the detail back and forth that the Talmud has. And the Talmud is not always really, by modern standards, it's not super detailed either. But compared to the Mishnah, the Talmud has a lot more detail. The Mishnah is super brief, which is part of the reason why we practically speaking, needed something like the Talmud. Mishnah is very terse.
Number 2, to record the final decisions. Following the opinion of one of the two opponents in disagreement concerning the precise version of the Mishnah on its interpretation or on the new laws instituted by the Tanaim and included in the Mishnah. 3, to record the new applications which the sages of each generation derived from the Mishnah, disclosing the basic underlying principles which the Tanaim of the Mishnah based themselves upon, arranging them in the form that we have now.
All right, so the Tanaim is what we call the sages of ancient Israel, who are recorded as teaching in the Mishnah. So the ancient sages, the ancient rabbis that are mentioned in the Mishnah are called Tanaim, all right, as opposed to the sages that appear only in the Gemara. If they appear only in the Gemara, they are not called Tanaim. They're called Amoraim. All right, so you don't need to master these words right now, but gotta be introduced to them for the first time at some point. So Tanaim are earlier and more authoritative than the Amoraim.
I was thinking that was the other way.
Well, it depends on how you're looking at it. If you consider your most recent sages,
closest to today, more recent.
If you consider go ahead.
Go ahead.
So if you consider your most recent sages the most authoritative, which in a way they are, practically speaking, they are, then yeah, the Amoraim would be more authoritative. But so the Torah commands us to heed the sages that will be there in those days. So from that idea, we have an idea that the most recent sages are the most authoritative. That's true. It's kind of like two sides to this.
Yeah.
The one is, though. Yeah, the thing is, though, that the most recent sages, the current sages, only have that authority that are mentioned in that verse of the Torah if they're in the place that the Almighty chose. God doesn't just say that the judges in those days. He says the judges in those days who will be in the place that I shall choose, not just random anywhere on earth. If it could be any judge anywhere, even if they're the most qualified intellectually, they don't have that authority. That's not what the text says. God didn't say the judges that will be in Borough Park, New York. He didn't say the judges who will be in Tel Aviv. He didn't say the judges who will be in Poland. He said the judges will be in the place that I shall choose. So that's number one. That's if they're in the present day. We heed judges no matter where they are, scholars of Israel, no matter where they are, in lieu of that commandment, meaning when we don't have anything better to do. And yes, the consensus among the various scholars, at least the majority opinion, if you can find out what that is, people typically just assume it, but that's not scientific. That's not objective. Ideally, we would give weight to the majority opinion, assuming they're qualified scholars, regardless of where they live, on the condition that we have no better alternative. And that was already the case in the time of the Talmud. That's not just today. In the time of the Talmud, we did not have the scholars of Israel in the sitting and judging in the place that God chose. And they were in different locations. There were some in the land of Israel, and there were some in Bavel, in the what is today Iraq. That's not the highest authority, right? But there was no other authority at that time, so that's what we accepted. But that is different. You should know that that is a different level of authority as opposed to the authority of judges who are actually sitting in the place that God chose. It's not the same thing. Also, there's a difference in authority between modern day rabbis today. No matter how great or highly esteemed and respected, no matter how objectively accurate their rulings are, they do not have the same level of authority as the Tannaim, because the Tannaim had samicha. The Tannaim, the sages of the Mishnah, had authority to legislate and adjudicate, authority that directly went back to Moses.
Right.
We've lost that. So, in a way, practically speaking, your most recent or your currently living scholars have greater authority, practically speaking, but in practice is not necessarily objective reality from the perspective of the Torah with regard to authority. Practically speaking, your local Orthodox rabbi has more authority because that's who the community has imbued authority to.
Mhm.
But his authority only extends as far as that local community has imbued him with authority. His authority does not extend over all the earth. His authority does not extend over the Torah. The Torah did not give universal authority to your local Orthodox rabbi. It just didn't, no matter how great he is. And I'm talking about us as well. We don't have universal authority to rule on things that the sages of the Talmud did not discuss, that the sages of the Mishnah never mentioned. We can rule on them, but we don't have authority over all the earth to say that if you go by a different opinion, you're sinning.
Mm.
We would be sinning because we would be elevating ourselves to the level of authority of the great Sanhedrin, and we are not that. Unfortunately, there are myriads of Jewish leaders today in the ultra-Orthodox world. I put Orthodox because this is unorthodox to do this, but there are myriads who do this very thing, elevate themselves to the status of the great Sanhedrin, Hashem Yishmor. And because of that, we don't have a great Sanhedrin. Why do you need a great Sanhedrin when every man for himself? It's just a little bit more of, well, not a little bit. They're a lot more educated than Christians or Muslims with regard to Torah, but it's like a glorified version of Christianity's every man for themselves. Really, that's what it is. And it's because of that sin. It is a sin. It's a violation of Torah. Because of that sin of lesser rabbis establishing themselves as if they have authority, the great council of Israel, which they don't. It's because of that we don't have a great supreme council of Israel. Because why do you need to bother with that when you just have your local Orthodox rabbi who has the same level of authority? This is a serious breach of the covenant. And we have a lot of other problems that grow out of this. If anything, this is the sin of all sins of our generation in the Orthodox world.
Here locally, as you mentioned, and to me, it's just one of the things that irks me the most, I think, about the land is that they do not have the Sanhedrin seated at the Lishkat Hagazit on the Temple Mount, which is doable. They could do it.
It's absolutely feasible now.
What do they do? They have the Knesset made up of non-Jews and other Jews, and
not
that's
just
their
non-Jews.
authority.
It's okay to be non-Jewish.
Yeah.
They have non-Jews
well, not for the Sanhedrin, though.
Who hate the Jewish people.
Exactly.
It's not just benign non-Jews. We have non-Jews who want us murdered.
Right. That's who you got in your government. Instead of the government that Hashem has established and set up and commanded us to have. And it's not hardly even talked about. I don't know. It's upsetting to me.
There are sectors of the Jewish world in Israel that do talk about it, but it's not the mainstream. That's true. The mainstream. That is the sin of all sins that we have right now. And there are, I can't tell you the number, but a massive percentage of the commandments in the Torah, these are basic aspects of the covenant between God and Israel. A large percentage. If I had to go out on a limb, I would say at least a third are very much dependent on the existence of a functioning Supreme Council of the people of Israel. Yeah, that's not a good thing that we don't have that. You know, the Torah depends, proper observance of Torah depends on the existence of a grace Medrin. I would like to say more than a third. I'm trying to be conservative.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking
Really, it's
like
much more. Because you
like
ask how any of the commandments that you do, any of them, if you have a question on how you do it in some new situation that was never discussed before, there is no authoritative, universally authoritative interpretation of how you should apply that commandment in the new situation. There's no authoritative, universally authoritative interpretation of how you should apply the commandment without a grace and Nadrin. It is the only universally authoritative source for Jewish law. Yes, sir. Sorry.
No, that's fine. They are trying to, and I don't know if they did it or not, but trying to bring back or trying to bring the death penalty for like terrorists and stuff like
At
that.
least, yeah, at least
Well,
this.
yeah, but I mean that's done by setting up the Sanhedrin, not by using a court made up of people who hate Israel and
You don't
want their
need a you
destruction.
don't need a Sanhedrin to kill people who openly say they want to kill us. You don't need that.
Well, I mean, to bring them before a court legally and to
You don't
sentence
even
them
have
to
to bring
death,
them in front of it.
you need a court of 71, no?
If we are talking about secular law, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you need that. But by Jewish law, you don't need a court to execute someone who is openly and actively trying to murder the Jewish people or openly and actively calling for others to murder the Jewish people. You don't, by Torah law, you don't need a Sanhedrin for that. They should be killed on the spot, on the spot.
Yeah,
The only
yeah.
time you shouldn't do that is if it violates your local laws, and doing so will get you put in prison. But if you have a decent government and somebody is actively you can demonstrate it, they should be killed. There's no need for a process. If somebody
Yeah, yeah.
comes to your front yard and has a knife or a gun or a grenade in his hand, looking at you and your children, and he's calling other people around to come and do the same thing, you do not need to wait for the police to get there. Blast
Well,
his head off.
of course. Yeah, yeah. And you're referring to like outsiders, non-citizens of Israel. But
I'm
even if
talking about citizens of Israel.
sure, it's
I don't care
obvious
if you're
for
a
like the Hamas. That's a duh, obviously.
if your mother and father are Jewish and they were super devout and they were very Zionist, but you come doing this, you should be killed. There's no respect of persons in this. I'm serious.
Yeah, I understand. I
You
was
don't, and I'm not just saying this as my opinion. There
no,
is
no, that
no, no
like the
basis for needing a Sanhedrin to do that. Get rid
the
of
death
them.
penalty, I guess, is more in related to religious items or religious or commandments that are where there was a death penalty involved. It wasn't
If if
necessarily
if the violation
terrorist related.
if the violation doesn't concern an immediate threat to people's lives,
Mhm.
then yeah, there should be a judicial process.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's if they're Israelites. If
Right,
they're not
right.
Israelites, they're
They're
not supposed to
not
be
up.
in the land of
Yeah,
Israel.
yeah.
We're
They're
not
not
supposed
under
to
that court
have
system.
we're not supposed to have non-Israelites in the land of Israel during a time in which we don't accept Gerim Toshavim, during a time in which we don't have uh, a legitimate status of not. There is a way that non-Israelites can live in the land of Israel, but they're not permitted by Torah law, by by the by Jude. They're not permitted by Talmudic law to live in the land of Israel during a time in which we don't have the majority of the people of Israel living in the land of Israel. There aren't supposed to be non-Jews in the land of Israel when the majority of the Jewish people are not there. And the majority of the Jewish people, once they're in the land of Israel, they cannot keep a large number of the agricultural laws. You cannot keep them unless you already have a Sanhedrin, because they need to be in the positions of the what do you call it, of the tribes of Israel.
Right.
We you either need a prophet who is proven as a prophet, or you need a Sanhedrin to decide these things. So you got to have a Sanhedrin, and you can't have non-Jews in the land of Israel until that's taken care of. You know,
Yeah, I guess
it's
this is
kind of a
not
basic
something that's
thing.
going to be happening in the next year, I
No,
guess.
of course, then you have to live with the reality that you have, but that doesn't mean you need to talk about it. No,
Okay.
you
Thanks
got
for
to.
clarifying that so I don't go around killing people.
Ah, to be clear, we're not saying go around killing people. We're
No.
saying in any location where your life is threatened.
Oh,
What does it
you're
matter if you're
obeying.
going to go to jail? If you're,
Yeah,
what does it matter if you're going to go to jail if you're likely not going to go to jail because you're dead?
right.
I would prefer to go to jail and be alive than have waited for permission from the Supreme Court of the United States to say that I can kill this man who's
Who's going to kill me?
clearly expressed his intent to murder me and my family. And to be clear, you should have no fear to say that in the United States, because that's already US law. You are permitted to kill somebody if they're in the act of killing you, if they're
In most
conspiring
states.
to kill you. So what?
I said in most states.
This is the law. This is federal law. I know that some states have a problem with that, but
Yeah,
yeah, if you're smart, you would not be in those states. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I don't even travel through them generally. I try to go around some
They're
places
not
just because
safe.
it's, yeah,
All right.
not
So
allowed to defend yourself, or you're going to spend gobs of money and time in prison or jail or something trying to,
really, they should be sued after that.
they should. All right.
Okay,
So
so that's
Spain,
what Tanaim
Spain.
are. We distinguish
Yeah.
between the Tanaim and the Amoraim. We got on that topic because of the question of authority, the difference between Tanaim and the Amoraim. Tanaim are the sages of the Mishnah. And the Amoraim are the sages that are after the Mishnah, who are mentioned in the Talmud.
They're
So
like the students of those.
yes, they are the
Okay.
students of the Tanaim.
Got it.
They
That
have a
makes a
lower
good
level
way.
of authority, objectively speaking, but in practice, they may have more authority because of the reality at hand. So
Okay.
that was here. Let's go back to this point. We were looking at the Gemara.
Yeah, we got through, I think I read through 3, but we could read 3 again.
All right, go ahead.
To record the new applications which the sages of each generation derived from the Mishnah, disclosing the basic underlying principles which the Tanaim of the Mishnah based themselves upon, arranging them in the form that we have now, and also to record the additional Gezeros,
Decrees, Gezeroth, decree.
Gezeroth, and Takanot
Those are enactments or edicts.
enacted ever since Rabbeinu Hakadosh up to the time of the author of the work, Rav Ashi.
Right, so this is all talking about the purpose of the Gemara, the purpose of the Talmud, in effect. And any Gezerot or Takanot, any decrees or edicts that were enacted after Rabbeinu HaKadosh, after the Mishnah, these are by definition not coming from the place that God chose. So we have accepted these, but the people of Israel have accepted them essentially voluntarily. They are, for all intents and purposes, the law of the people of Israel. But their authority stems from the Jewish people having accepted them.
Mm-hmm.
That means they do not have the same status as laws that came from the Great Sanhedrin as it is sitting in the Ishkat Gazit, on the Temple Mount.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a rabbi or a teacher or whoever trying to decide how something should apply in modern times, something from Talmudic law, from ancient halakha, they should distinguish between post-Mishnaic decrees and edicts and pre-Mishnaic decrees and edicts. And all the more so if you have a decree or edict that is stemming from the time that the Sanhedrin was actually on the Temple Mount. But in practice, these were accepted by the majority of the people of Israel. So we respect them and we live according to them, unless there's some pressing situation that would make that impractical or unreasonable. But you should have some degree of flexibility with this to distinguish it from the decrees of the actual grace and the that's the place that God chose. All right, number 4. The other purpose of the Gemara, as opposed to the Mishnah, is to record the Agadic Darashot. These are the homiletical expositions on the Torah and other parts of the Hebrew Bible. So these are like homilies and basically sermons, so to speak, full of metaphor and parables. Yes, thank you. And they are found all throughout the Talmud. For some reason, I'm not able to scroll on here. I thought that I would be able to. Oh, I guess I have to click, but I can't scroll. Okay. I think this is a good place to stop for today.
Okay.
We're stopping at.
So we'll be picking up on page 150 of the text itself.
Is there anything you want to talk about before we close?
Gosh, I'm always wanting to talk about stuff.
Well, look, someone just popped in at the last moment. Shalom alecha.
Yes. Yes. Uriah, how are you, sir?
Uriah.
Other than quiet. Uriah.
How's it going?
Good, good.
Good, good.
Fadala el.
Shavua Tov.
Come again?
Shavua Tov.
Shavua mevorach. Shavua mevorach. We were just closing. I don't know if you were watching. Were you watching up to this point?
No, I just got up upstairs, so I was doing some stuff downstairs.
Okay. Well, we had just opened the floor. If anybody in the comments, or if you yourself, we will give priority to you, of course, have any questions about any topic. We were just discussing the topics of chapter 7 and chapter 8 of Maimonides' introduction to the Mishnah, introduction to his commentary to the Mishnah. That's what we were talking about, but you can talk about or ask a question about anything at this point.
Okay.
What are you studying currently, Uriah?
It's a Vecheter on Malika.
Ah, yefeh.
Okay.
Yefeh. Let's try to do something a little bit more palatable to the masses.
Yes,
Basic.
yes, because I was talking to
You're talking about salting of meats, yes?
yes.
Okay.
I was talking to Victor about it and like wondering if because he likes novella, so
I like a novella. Yeah, only with a side of halif.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the topic.
Yeah.
I think
it's
we're
like,
talking about
he likes kashrut so much, maybe he wants to study Malika, and then after that, Basar B'Chalav, and then, you know.
Yeah.
Oh boy, you're a troublemaker, yeah.
Yes, gotta keep studying.
No, he's studying. He's studying. He was wanting to meet you, and so maybe we can connect afterwards.
Okay. Is there any question you have about perhaps the topic of the purpose of the Mishnah and the Gemara, or anything else that maybe is related in a broader to a broader population?
Well, I mean, just
You can also ask about Melecha. It's just very, very precise. Most of our viewers are from
that'll be between me and you because it's a very tough subject. It really is. As far as Mishnah, the Rambam.
We're talking about purpose, broad concepts here.
Broad purpose concepts.
Yeah. Most of our viewers are coming from Christian background or a non-Christian but non-observant background.
Okay.
We don't want to throw them into the debates about I don't know, about the disqualifying factors of a arava and the
Okay,
Arbaat
so let's
Tamim.
talk about Moedim and time-based mitzvot.
Okay.
That's easy.
Yeah. Holidays.
Yeah, that's easy enough because a lot of people, when I look online, are very curious. How do I do what I need to do right on the right time, on the right day, with the right calendar?
We have to remember that they did not have an atomic clock.
Yeah.
They didn't even
So
have a Rolex.
yeah, historically they had to look at the constellations, the moon. They had to use mountaintops to create fires so that they could beacon each
Right.
other for the Chodesh and everything like that. So, how do we know when we don't know? Like, well, you got to keep up with the times, current events.
Our sages were not imposing on the people of Israel the modern Western standards of precision time. Like you
Yes.
can look on myzmanim.com, for example, to find the halachic times for different things and to give a few different opinions. Like Rabbeinu Tam is listed there as well, for example. But if you look at these time charts, you will often see even the second listed there. The second. This is not what our sages were talking about. If somebody wants to go by that, that's great. But we should not, we should be careful not to commit the transgression uh, of anachronism, where we superimpose upon something historical, something which is impossible that they were historically even aware of or living
Mhm.
by. So when people want to become more observant and keep the holidays or keep Shabbat, it's great if you want to go by the super precise timing that you may find on halachic time apps such as My Zmanim.
Mhm.
That's just easy for me to remember, but I guess this Zmanim means times, so that's why it's easy to remember. But it's great if you want to go by that, but do not beat yourself over the head if you're not, getting it down to the precise second. It's and most of these apps add on a few minutes as well, so that you can have a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
So our sages were not expecting that you will be looking at your atomic clock based digital timer. Just don't wait to the last minute, basically. Our sages even gave some permissions with regard to after sunset, the time called Ben Shamashot,
Mhm.
where you can do things that are forbidden, midrabanan, for rabbinically forbidden, if you're doing it for a mitzvah. So, long story short, don't beat yourself over the head, but just don't wait to the last minute, and you'll be all right. They
Yes.
didn't want to create a people who are paralyzed by neurosis or OCD. When
Yes.
our religiosity and our devotion gets to such a point that we are losing sight of consideration for each other or even for ourselves and beating ourselves up, something's awry. That's all I got to say about the times right now.
Yeah.
Ma
No, it's
Tomer.
how do we make a kula, a leniency, when there's an issue of like the story in the Talmud in the banquet, when you
Okay.
miss saying Shema and everything like that, what can you do to redeem yourself without breaking halachot?
You can get in
So
some damned if you do, damned if you don't situations
yeah,
sometimes.
I
And that's
know when you're going to shul 3 times a day and you're keeping up with the times of the shul, and the one thing everybody talks about is shkia.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's
I'm sorry.
because now we're gonna have a debate before we even daven.
Right. Yep. Our
So
sages were not concerned about uh my goodness, like they didn't even have it wasn't even the realm of possibility for them
yeah,
to be as nuanced and precise on these things as we can today. I don't think that it means that it is unimportant, but I do think it means that by it, I'm referring to our sages, knowledge of the fact that they didn't even have these abilities to be so precise. I do think it means that we should not let it override basic decency and uh, practical consideration for what is going to be most um, pleasant for the community.
Yes.
So, if according to Maizmanim or whatever chart they're using for the times, if according to that, if we don't start with Shema at this very moment and skip everything else that the community is used to doing, then we're going to feel like, we're Reform or we're Christians now.
Yes.
If that's the mentality, I don't think it's right. If you jump into that kind of a high pressure mentality to where you got to drop everything right now and you can't even explain anything because you only have 3 seconds left, nobody's going to know what's going on.
No.
Even if you're in a black hat community, they don't usually go that extreme. But what I'm saying is, I gave an extreme example, but even in black hat communities, you get the same problem, but manifest in a different way. It manifests not by just skipping to Shema. They don't usually do that, but it will manifest in the sense of speed reading.
Yes.
Shouldn't do that. If you
Yes.
have to, if you have to read so fast that nobody can really have intention, then you might as well not be doing it. Well, instead, what they should do is know what to drop. And that's hard to do on the fly if they haven't been taught in advance. But they need to be taught what, in these kind of situations, what are we able to skip and what not. They should discuss that. It's not usually discussed because the default is that you have to say everything in the Siddur. And that's the wrong approach. It's not halachic. Do you have any comments to say on that?
Well, that's why, like, growing up in New York, it was rough. Who do you choose? Like, because when I was younger, I went to Bobov. Then after that,
Really?
yes.
Oh,
After that, I got interested in the idea of Chabad, and I tried it out, but they read too fast.
man.
So
Dude,
then,
and with all my criticism of Chabad, let's not kid ourselves that that's something unique to Chabad. They're not. I don't think they're unique. Maybe compared to Bab of Hasidim, but
Mhm.
just generally speaking, there's a problem with speed reading.
It was way
It's a widespread problem.
Sometimes I don't even feel like they were actually pronouncing the words. Like they were
Of
just
course
running
not.
the
Of
first
course
sound
not.
and then the last sound, and then like sometimes there was a mumble.
Blurred.
I'm like, what was that? What was going
They're
on?
not even pronouncing the sounds according to botched pronunciation. Like
No,
it's just I have literally seen people going. It's not. It's like they're not even trying to fake it. Oh my gosh.
no, they're not.
Oh gosh. It's a mockery. It's not just a halachic problem. It's a
No.
mockery. It makes us look like a joke.
Then I met a Rav from New Jersey, and I said, okay, this is good. He was Sephardic, but he davened the Yemeni style.
Okay.
And he introduced me to a lot of people in New Jersey, and they actually took their time and they considered they were an Ashkenazi shul, but they also, like, their nusach was Sepharad. So I was like, okay, this is nice because they're not being like, oh, you can't do anything outside the box, but you have to stay on point.
If you follow the instruction of Hazal, of our sages, their memory be a blessing. If you follow their instruction that a prayer leader, we got to try to use words that people can understand, right?
Yes.
So if we follow our sages' guidance that the person who leads prayers in the Jewish community must be someone who articulates the distinction between the different Hebrew letters. If you're
Yes.
following that, they cannot be flying through the prayers. You cannot fly through the prayers when you are pronouncing every single letter properly. You can go quickly, but you cannot reach the level of absurdity that is now practically the norm in most places. You won't get
Yeah.
to that point. They would be appalled. They would be appalled to see this stuff.
Yes.
That's heartbreaking, even. Meanwhile, the people who are slaughtering us and spread false accusations against the Jewish people on a daily basis, online and in the media. Meanwhile, when they pray, they take their time. It
Yes.
doesn't make us look good. It's very bad.
No.
I'm not speaking good words on them. What is better, to butcher your prayers but not murder people, or to slaughter people, intentionally slaughter people, but have beautiful prayers? I don't know
Yes.
about you. I do know what you would say, thankfully. It's
Yes.
better to botch our prayers, but to not be slaughtering innocent people. But it is possible to do both.
Yes.
And when the people who slaughter us do look more holy to the public, it doesn't make us look good. We're not helping ourselves. We need to make Jewish prayer devout again. We need to make Jewish prayer beautiful again, not a burden, but something
Yes.
inspiring again. And that
Yeah.
will awaken more Jews to be more Torah observant as well. If it's more enjoyable, if it doesn't look like a burden that
Yes.
we just can't wait to throw off our shoulders, which is exactly what Hazal said we should not do, and yet we're doing it. So we see
Mhm.
one sin leads to another,
Yes.
unfortunately, but one
That's
mitzvah.
I highly respect the Black Hat community. But I'm more modern Orthodox now in the sense of I don't wear the black hat and the black suit all the time.
Hmm.
I like to dress comfortable to my liking, to
It's
my
way more important.
yes.
Dude, there's so many
I
other
still,
important things.
I still wear my kippah when I most of the time my uh katan and everything like that. Some rabbis that I grew up with were like, because I wear techelet, feel like I've gone a different direction. And I tell them like,
You've
look,
gone off the derech because
yeah,
you're wearing techelet.
yes. So I say,
You see the insanity.
how how does this make me any less for techelet when I'm just trying to fulfill my
It's
obligations?
not less. You're doing what God said.
I'm doing more. I'm doing more.
What the heck? What
But
the
I'm
heck?
doing it wrong? How could that be? And that's the one thing that really made me sit down with some people in Eretz Israel on a few trips and say to myself, do I really need to be having these arguments?
Maybe we're just speaking to the wrong people. Like,
Yes.
there are so many Jews in the world, so many Jews in the world who are good people,
Yes.
but did not have the opportunity to learn Torah. And
Yes.
they may even they want to know. I know that many want to know, but because life is busy, they're busy supporting their families. They don't have many people teaching them. But we're going to waste our time debating about whether or not it's an avera, a sin, to wear
Exactly.
techelet, to put the blue thread in the tzitzit, which God commanded us to do. Like, at
Yes.
least, even if they disagree that it's proper techelet, at least they can respect you for wanting to do it. That shows that you want to do it. How many
Yes.
other battles are more worth fighting than that?
Yes. Like one day I was talking to a kashrut rabbi about it because he sees my techelet, and I was like, you're talking to me about this, but you have a yeshiva bocher over there doing the same thing, but you don't talk to him. So this made me sit down and say, okay, if we're going to have a machlochet, we're going to have one based on something valid, not something I do that I'm trying to do
Exactly.
for myself, right? And I'm
Absolutely.
not teaching anybody to be any less or more yeshivish because I do something slightly different. Slightly. It's not even a whole thing.
Ridiculous.
It's not even a
This,
whole.
if you ask me, and I'm sure this would offend the majority of people in the Haredi establishment. If you ask
Mhm.
me, this mentality, heaven forbid it should justify the atrocities done in the name of Jesus. But sometimes the sin of one sin is greater sin. I mean, that's one of the kalalim, that's one of the principles that our sages have taught us. That the punishment of a sin is that it brings more sin. If you ask
Yes.
me, it is the same mentality that birthed Christianity and led to the massacres of Jews. I'm not
Which
saying
I,
it justifies it, but it's
yes.
like it got the ball rolling. How so? You see in the New Testament, and I think this is the grain of truth that you have in Christianity, a grain of truth. Every lie has some truth. This is the
Yes.
power that is the true power in Christianity that keeps it going. And so long as we don't humble ourselves before God to look inward in the religious Jewish communities specifically, then it's going to continue to be a power that Christianity has over the Jewish people. And that is something that Jesus reiterates again and again in the New Testament. I shouldn't say New Testament, in the Gospels. He says something that I'm sure is true because our sages say basically the same thing in the Talmud, but we just don't heed it. But in Christianity, it's become a focal point, and they will never lose sight of it. But we're completely oblivious to it, and that is missing the forest for the trees.
So he said
Go ahead.
in the writings he says this, or
So I mentioned earlier, I don't think you were watching earlier, but in the one of the key chapters in the New Testament, it's one of the most notorious chapters from a Jewish perspective. It's Matthew chapter 23. It is the chapter that is single-handedly the most quoted chapter by Jew haters. Matthew
Okay.
chapter 23, where God, not God, heaven, Shem Yishmor. Elef Abdelim. Elef Abdelim. Matthew chapter 23. The Pharisees are called, I don't remember verbatim how it says it, but basically the Pharisees are given scathing criticism. The Perushim are given scathing criticism by Jesus. And if you ask me, it seems pretty clear that he's talking about the hypocrites. And who knows the revising of the original text. I do think that there was probably a less heretical underlying text, but we don't have it, so it's speculation. But anyway, in the context is clear. He's talking about the hypocritical leadership of the Jewish people, and we know that there was hypocritical leadership because our sages talk about it as well. There was even murder between the sages of Hillel and the sages of Shammai. People were killing each other in the name of Torah for things that they should not be killed for. We know this from Jewish tradition. So, and Jesus doesn't even talk about that in this chapter. But anyway, he gives scathing criticism of their hypocrisy. And he talks about how they're meticulous to tithe even the most negligible amounts of spices and foods. But they will also make their tefillin extra broad, but he's calling out their BS. He's saying they're doing it to be seen. And how does he know? Because they're neglecting the more weighty parts of Torah, and that is being fair, being compassionate, and being faithful, having faith. And I think that's right. And also, this is important for Jews to know, since this is the most used chapter in the New Testament by Jew haters. It's important that Jews know this. Know your enemy. If we could throw it back at the Jew haters, we would be powerful. Perhaps that's why God has allowed some of these books to continue to exist, because there's something in it that is not new. We already have it in the Torah. But because we're so distracted by the minutia, this is still hitting us in the face, but we're just not listening. And the listening that we need to do is not to worship Jesus, heaven forbid. The listening we need to do is not to abandon Torah, but is to recognize the Torah that is the power inside of it, that little grain of Torah that it's holding on to and slapping us in the face with. And that is that we should do all these details. We should be careful about the details of keeping mitzvot, but without sacrificing the big picture, without sacrificing the general rule, which is the overriding rule, and that is to be compassionate, to be forgiving, to pursue fairness, and to have faith, not just be mechanical robots. It's interesting that that's in the chapter that is most used against the Jewish people, where not just does Jesus say that they are hypocrites. He doesn't just say that. But before the criticism, he says that the scribes and the Pharisees, who I'm about to give scathing criticism of, they sit in the seat of Moses. Therefore, whatever they tell you to do, that you should do and observe. That's how Matthew chapter 23 begins. How
Interesting.
many Christians know that it begins that way? Practically none, but it's there. It's there.
It's interesting.
It's unbelievable. And also when he points out all their hypocrisies and their obsession with minutia, Jesus, when he says they should do these things without neglecting the weightier matters of Torah, he says they should do these things. This is one of the main reasons why, I, with all due respect, I can, seriously, I don't mean that facetiously. With all due respect, I can understand why the Jewish people, tend to feel defensive or uneasy when people say anything about Jesus. How can you blame people who've been murdered in the name of this man
Yes.
for 2,000 years? But if you would actually and this should be the job of rabbis, and they don't do it. I'm not saying regular Jews should do this or need to do this, but rabbis should do this. It even says, I don't know if it's in the Gemara, but it's certainly in the words of the Rishonim, that Dayanim need to be familiar with the religious texts of other religions. They're supposed to be familiar with it.
I think so.
Say what?
I agree. I got sort of in a heated argument with a Rav about the idea of going to college to an anthropologist to learn about different cultures and different beliefs. And, I went through all of anthropology. I liked the science part of it more than I liked about the culture, but I stuck with the culture after I took the other 4 categories of anthropology. And I found out, you have to learn how to debate these concepts.
How can we be effective and not look like fools if we don't know what we're talking about?
And so I did. I started, and that's how I found Rabbi Tobias Singer and people like him, because I was saying to myself, whenever I got into a conversation with somebody who wasn't a Jew, that topic would always come up, and they were like, "Well, how can you not believe in this?"
Jews would not feel defensive or insecure when a Christian comes and tries to make them become a Christian, if we knew how much weight we have on our side. And Jews feel insecure because they're uneducated, so they don't know the weight of evidence on our side. Yes. That's a problem with us. That's a problem with us.
Sounded like I didn't know what I was talking about, and here I am. I grew up in the text. I grew up, Jewish all my life, and I'm saying to myself, how do I have these conversations with people now that I'm going in between 2 worlds, school and Judaic school and stuff like that, and doing my studies, and I sound like a fool. And I was embarrassed. How do I read how do I read from the Lashon Kodesh, the Holy Hebrew, the Holy Tongue, and I don't know how to defend myself?
Because till today, and the overwhelming majority of yeshivot, I'm sure you will vouch for this, the norm is to focus on the minutia of rabbinic dialectics, of rabbinic debate, hypothetical debate, the majority of the time, not even so practical. That is the overwhelming majority of what people are studying in yeshivot, rather than first getting a foundation, not a flimsy, but a firm foundation in the Pashat of Tanakh. Not only the Parashat HaShavua, but all of Tanakh. Only then should we move on to the minutia of the Mishnah, and then to the Gemara. And this is not just my opinion or just the Rambam's. This is the way that Hazal assumed that we would do. They didn't assume we would jump from nothing into these debates about where you should place sacrificial meat on the Mizbeach, on the altar. We got it backwards.
Yeah, you got to take care of practical life first, and then you can go on to the heavy stuff.
I would like you to vouch, because a lot of our viewers don't have a lot of experience in the Jewish world. How would you describe the growing up in the black hat world, the ultra Orthodox world? How would you describe the standard way in which people are instructed in Torah in religious Jewish schools in yeshivot? Would you say that they begin by mastering the basic text of the Torah and the Hebrew Bible, and then incrementally advancing? Or would you say they jump into debates? What would you say?
Debates.
And about how much time? Don't worry about being scientifically accurate. What percentage of time of a student who's learning full-time in yeshiva, what percentage of time would you say he spends studying Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible?
Ooh, 35 minutes.
In a day,
Yeah.
studying the Hebrew Bible.
Pick a pasuk or an idea of a Gemara from the Torah, and then 9 to 11 hours will be just Gemara. And
I
then
would say
maybe,
that you're being generous.
yeah,
Like, if they learn anything about Tanakh, it's going to already be tied or an outgrowth in some way of learning Gemara, of learning Talmud. They're not
yes.
just. I never experienced, and maybe I misunderstood you, but I never even experienced as a norm in yeshivot 30 minutes a day devoted to just reading Tanakh without Gemara. I never experienced that. Is that what you're saying? That you would say 30 minutes a day just looking at the text of Tanakh?
Not looking at it, just building an idea from it.
So even when
Yeah.
they're looking at it in those 30 minutes, it's not just
Yeah.
Tanakh.
So everything else is an argument of an argument.
That's what I'm saying. It's almost non-existent.
How do we think about how do we approach the idea of Paskin from the argument of, let's say, the Taz versus the Shach, or the Rima versus the Mechaber, right?
It's so convoluted.
I'm like, okay, you're taking a pasuk from the Torah itself, you're giving an idea as like a fraction to build off this argument from, but we're not even talking about the idea, we're talking about the argument the whole entire time on who paskins what and how they paskined it pre-contemporary and post-contemporary. Because then we'll go from the Mechaber to the Tosafot, and then we'll go straight into Moshe Feinstein's works. And then I'm like, well, what about with the Torah? Because the Torah brought the argument down first.
They don't even have the framework yet.
Yeah.
They're like putting up the drapes and debating about what kind of, flooring they should have, and you don't even have the foundation laid.
So I'm saying to myself, we've talked more about 16 rabbis than we did about one pasuk in the Torah.
Yep. Now, I'm assuming you're at least a little bit familiar with Pirkei Avot.
Yes.
Do you recall, and tell me, is Pirkei Avot written like in this last 50 years or last century, or is it from the Middle Ages, or is it from the earliest sages of Israel that we have their words recorded?
Well, that's an interesting question.
You got to know the answer to this. Pirkei Avot, is it from the Ahronim, or is it from the Rishonim, or is it from the Tanaim?
I'll have a stab at it if
Is Pirkei Avot from the Middle Ages, or is it part of the Mishnah?
I would say more the Mishnah.
It's the Mishnah. Yeah, it's actually part of the Mishnah.
Yeah.
It's a non-legal part of the Mishnah.
Because when you're putting a timeline on it, I don't see how to derive a timeline on it, because it's the wisdoms of the Father.
Well, you can put a timeline on it in that it's pre-Talmud. It's earlier than it's from the Mishnaic era.
Yeah.
And some of the quotes in there predate the Mishnaic era for sure. But as a text, it's from the. Go ahead.
In the sense, putting an accuracy of the timeline. What I'm just going to say, that's why I'm trying to struggle with it, because if you're saying Mishnah pre-Talmud, yes, that is the timeline. But like most people,
I'm asking my point. The reason for asking is to give people a sense of how classic, and how representative of classical ancient Judaism, rabbinic Judaism. Not talking about Karaite Judaism or any kind of thing like this. What do the sages of the Mishnah say in Pirkei Avot? What do they say about how we should learn Torah? It's actually taught in Pirkei Avot. They give the method that Maimonides brings. He didn't
I mean,
bring it up out of thin air. It's first Mikra, then you
mhm.
advance. First scripture, Bible, and then you advance to Mishnah. You don't just jump into legalese. You have to make a foundation.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
There are numerous references in the Gemara to children learning Mikra Babet
Yes,
Rabbanam, in the house of their rabbis.
I
Like
understand where you're going.
this was the normal. You have it with Rabbi Akiva, like also learning the alphabet, and then he goes and studies with the kids. They're learning Mikra. Like this was a well-known, well-established practice of the early Jewish communities, rabbinic Jewish communities. It's not like a Karaite thing that you would master the text of the Torah. Now, like if you have a non-Jew or a less observant Jew who's starting to want to be more connected to Jewish tradition, to keeping Torah, if they go online, you can't tell any difference if you don't really have experience in person. You don't have years of experience. You can't really tell whether the majority of the Jewish people are like Karaites or rabbinic Jews or Messianics. It's really hard to tell. If anything, you might think that most are Messianic because unfortunately, a lot of stuff you can search for this Jewish related and Messianic stuff comes up first. But if you have a Jew or a non-Jew who's trying to get into Torah observance and they encounter Karaites who are quoting Hebrew Bible left and right and seem to know their stuff compared to the average rabbinic Jew, like you can't blame them for going to the Karaite route, which is basically, to be frank, is basically Christianity without Jesus. It's just,
The
it's an
Karaites,
every man for themselves thing. So what?
so the Karaites do this?
Yes, they're very
Okay.
focused on scripture, which is a good thing, but they conveniently ignore the inconvenient parts of scripture. Still, though, they have a certain framework and broad picture that unfortunately is completely lacking in the rabbinic establishment. That doesn't mean that rabbinic Judaism is invalid. I'm the last to think that. But it does give strength to people who weaken the Jewish people. But my point is that all of these are weakening the Jewish people. Like if we were doing things right, we wouldn't have the mess that we have. And if
So
we had
how
things
would
right, so what?
how would you structure a yeshiva then? Like in the sense of how do we study more
Are you
Torah?
familiar? Are you familiar with the Zilberman Yeshivot?
No.
Zilberman Yeshiva? You should look into them. It's a Haredi yeshiva system, but it's not the mainstream, but it's growing, thank God. Uh, they're they're also very strong students of the Gra, of the Vilna Gaon.
Okay.
They're overwhelmingly Ashkenazi, but a lot of Sephardic Jews, traditional Sephardic Jews, are drawn to them because although they're Ashkenazi, but their system of study, they've essentially, I don't want to say they adopted the traditional Sephardic way of studying, which what they're doing is the traditional Sephardic way of studying. But I don't want to say they adopted it because Ashkenazi Jews originally were doing this as well. It's not the Sephardic way. It's simply the way of historical classical Judaism that at some point Ashkenazi Jewry abandoned. Sephardic Jewry continued to maintain it into the modern era, but then when they started getting more influenced by Ashkenazi Jewry, which had already abandoned it, then the Sephardic mainstream started abandoning the classical way as well. But that's far more recent with Sephardic Jews that they abandoned it and adopted the chaos of throwing people into Talmud before giving them a strong foundation in scripture and then Mishnah. So
I
anyway,
think that
go ahead.
I think that's why I struggle with how to paskin who to use when I'm trying to figure out a question in my yeshiva on who do I go with when it comes to the,
Any question, any scenario. It's
'Cause, like,
because with all the hours of studying Talmud in the yeshiva system, they don't teach Talmud with intent to learn how to arrive at halacha.
yeah, like I'll give you for instance. Let me pull it up here. Like in the case of the Rishal and the Rema, the Shach and the Taz on a matter of how we paskin for if meat was salted for 24 hours and fell into sear, right?
Okay.
Who do we go with? Do we
Did you
go
say
with
tsir or sir? Samech
sear,
or tzadi?
Sadi?
Okay.
So if it's in, you know, this mystery sludge, I'll put it in, basic terminology. Is it Usr Kadai Klipa?
Okay.
Right? So now I have to figure out whether it's the Shak, the Taz, the Rishal, or the Rema. And how do I paskin that properly based on the opinions of these four rabbis?
Okay.
So I say to myself, okay, do I go with the most predominant rabbi who holds the most tenure, or do I go with the most practical rabbi who holds the most knowledge?
And what are they teaching you?
So I would say the answer would be Rashab, but then I'm wrong and it's the Shach.
Why? Why?
And they don't tell me why. They just say
That's
try.
not good. They need to tell you why. They really need to tell you why.
So how do I know where I'm wrong? If I say it's the Rishal according to the meat in the seer is usher immediately, the Ramah holds that the usher kadai klipa. This matches the standard ruling of the halakhic source.
So if it's an unresolved matter in the Gemara, then there is no one. This is something that we keep reiterating and should be reiterated. It's not that all opinions are equal. Some opinions are more authoritative in that they are more grounded in text than others, or grounded in text plus reason. But there is no one universally authoritative opinion for post-Talmudic questions.
I see.
There's no universally. It's not that all opinions are equal. I'm not saying that. Some opinions are more informed than others. But the same way that during the era of the Din Gadol, you could have 70 different opinions and Shivim Panim LaTorah, 70 different perspectives, but only the consensus opinion is truly authoritative. So also nowadays, you can have more than one legitimate or hypothetically legitimate opinion. And I'm not saying all opinions are equal. Again, you could have 70 different legitimate opinions, meaning that they're coming from a place of knowledge and recognition of certain guiding principles. But not a single one of them will be universally authoritative. So who decides? Well, at the end of the day, it depends on either who you voluntarily decide to be your posek or what the community consensus is in your neighborhood. But there is no one to say it like an absolute that this is it. That verges on kfira. I don't know if kfira is the right term. Well, it's like a denial of the mitzvah to heed the sages of the great Sanhedrin, because the authority over all of Israel is only given to them. It's not given to any one posek, and that's one of the most beautiful. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, I agree with that. It just gets confusing when nobody sits down with me and says, okay.
They don't frame it that way. They don't say it that way. In practice, in the Haredi world, they act as if whatever rabbi or posek, that they're promoting, they act it as if it's a given that that person is the authority over the entire world. And this is nonsense. Not only is it nonsense, but it's dangerous. And it tastes or smells of heresy. And I know that they love to throw around the term heresy in the Haredi world for anybody who dares to disagree on any popular opinion. But
Well, isn't the whole
go ahead.
Talmud about disagreements? I mean,
Absolutely,
so if we
absolutely.
can't learn how to disagree with one another and still respect each other and not say you're a mean, a heretic,
Right. It's absurd.
come
There
on.
is such a thing as a meme. There is
Yeah,
such a thing as a meme, but it's
there
not
is.
as it's not as simple a thing to be thrown around as is popular in the Haredi world. But oh, there was something. The the most beautiful thing to me, the most beautiful thing in the Jewish religion compared to all other religions and compared to other ideologies is that classical Judaism
Yes. When you say
does
classic.
not does not hold for anyone a sense of autocratic authority. There is no single person
No,
in classical Judaism who has authority over everybody else. No one, not even Mashiach, not the Messiah, not the not the Av Beit Din, not the Nasi, nobody.
it's a
It
group.
all of it answers to another. It's a balance of powers
Yes.
before it was popular. And I think that
And,
is incredible because there's only one, وَإِن كَمَوهُ. La
yes.
ilaha illa Allah wa Mustafa Rasulullah. There is no other God but God. The
Yeah.
moment we give all authority to one entity other than God, for me, that's already idolatry. Yes, sir.
Whom you or somebody else?
Whoever raised their hand, I saw somebody was raising
Oh,
their hand.
I don't know if I did accidentally. I
The,
was going to say
in effect, it's idolatry.
I want to
Go
end
ahead.
the live stream, and then
Okay.
but stay on for introductions here. So if you want to just close out,
Yeah. Let me
and
say
then
the
everybody stay here.
תפילה.
Okay.
אתם רואים את המסך? You see the screen?
Loading. There it
There
is.
we
Okay. وَدَعَنِي لَفَنَخَ أَدْنَاءِ إِلَهَي. I'm grateful before you, O eternal, the powerful authority over me. شَسْتَمْتَاحِ الْقِيمِ يَشْبَه بِثَمِينَ رَاش. And you have placed my portion among those who dwell in the house of study. وَلَا سَمْتَاحِ الْقِيمِ يَشْبَه كَرَانَث. For you have not placed my portion among those who dwell idly on street corners. شأني مشكيم وهم مشكيمين. For we both get up early. أني مشكيم لدبري تورا وهم مشكيم لدبورين بطلين. I arise into words of Torah, but they arise unto empty matters. أني عمل وهم عملين. We both toil. أني عمل قبل سخور. I toil and receive reward. وهم عملين وإن مقبلين سخور. They toil, but they don't receive reward. أني رأس وهم رأسين. I run and they run. أني رأس لحية عالم حبا. I run into the life everlasting. وهم رأسين لبئر شاحت. But they run into a pit of destruction. May it be your will before you that we humble ourselves before you to align our lives and our thoughts and our behaviors with your ways. To walk in your ways as you are patient, we should be patient. As you are a God of reason, we should be reasonable. As you are forgiving, we should be forgiving. And as you have instructed your people, so we should walk in your ways and instruct all ears that would heed. To magnify your name and to be great as we walk in accordance with the covenant as you commanded it, and not as our ancestors have erred. Return us unto you, and we shall return. For the sake of your name, the good of all mankind. And everybody says, Amen.
Shavua Tov to everybody.